Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was the heir of the ancient sage. Naruto's fateful battle on the valley takes him to a new world so different from his own. Now, the heir to the ancient sage of the six paths must forge his own destiny by facing the challenges ahead. Find out here. Welcome aboard. Chapter 4, Fight. If there was one thing that Naruto would wholeheartedly agree with Shikamaru, it was that almost all situations became inexorably more troublesome where women were involved. Whether it was buying clothes, food, planning an event, or in the present case, buying flowers. Yellow is the best for friendship, explained Jean as she picked a few tulips. A bright and positive-looking color. Aurora, however, was looking at the green chrysanthemums with interest. Green is the color of nature, of life and rebirth, she said as her fingertips traced the flower delicately. It might do Susan some good to have that connection. The doctors say that she isn't in a critical state anymore. It's only recovery from now on, countered Jean. Can't we get both? Asked Naruto, his hands filled with bags, each one with a different logo from the various assortment of shops he'd accompanied Jean and Aurora to. He was beginning to understand why Scott didn't want to come along. Not that he'd pass a chance to spend time with the two female mutants. I believe that can work, said Aurora, kneeling down to pick the yellow and green flowers and organizing them into a bouquet. Naruto knew that the white-haired mutant was well versed when it came to nature. She was a force of it, after all. Already, she had told him about a plan to create a garden in the mansion, as well as one smaller one next to her room. Being a fellow Green Thumb, the Jinchuriki was more than happy to help with Aurora's little project. Well then, interrupted Jean. We have the get-well hamper, the balloon, the flowers, the chocolates, anything missing? Us, said Aurora. The hospital is very strict about their hours. We better get there soon. Right, Jean said sheepishly as they paid for the flowers and started to walk over to the hospital, taking the subway which was thankfully less crowded than usual. I still can't believe that Susan would do something as outlandish as going to space. What do you think happened up there? Asked Jean. Naruto shrugged. I guess we'll see when we get there. Thank the goddess that nothing serious happened to her. Things could have been much worse than they were, Aurora consoled. We still don't know exactly her status, only that she's apparently stable and available for visitations. Jean furrowed her brow. Even then, we had to get special permission. Naruto grinned. She'll be all right, he assured. Jean responded with a small smile. You're right, Jean sighed. I guess I'm worrying a little too much, hey? She suddenly exclaimed as she stood up. Since when are you taller than me? Naruto looked confused as she stood side to side with him. I've always been taller than you, Jean. No way. Jean said. You were always the shorter one. Naruto smirked. After being one of the shorter students in the academy, it was nice that he was finally getting his long-delayed growth spurt. As of now, he stood a little taller than Jean and just a smidge shorter than Aurora. With any luck, he would continue to keep growing more and more. I'm a growing boy, Naruto offered, a little smug. The hospital was only a couple of blocks away from the station. It was a tall building, just like everything in the giant city. In the front, there seemed to be an elderly yet jovial man trying to open the door while holding a box in his hands. Jean and Aurora promptly went to help him. Thank you, the old man wheezed, who despite his age still kept an air of youth and timeless mirth. You're welcome. Where are you taking these? Asked Jean. Just to the car, gotta get it back home. Jean smiled tenderly. Don't worry, Naruto will help, right? The tone of voice meant that it was not a suggestion. Heir, sure. Naruto just held his already overburdened hands. Just put it on the top, old man. Naruto. Aurora chided. Manners. The elderly man just chuckled. Oh, it's nothing. I have not forgotten my age. Come on, kiddo. The stranger started to walk over to his parked car, the ever-present smile never fading. Even with sunglasses hiding his eyes, they seemed to spark with endless amusement and imagination. Thank you, kiddo, he said as he got into the car. The world needs more heroes like you, you know? I'm not really sure that this was all that heroic, old man. The man laughed. Every little thing counts. Your adventure is just beginning. His smirk then turned a little more devious. A little advice, kiddo. You better hold on to those beautiful ladies, you won't regret it. Before Naruto could even respond, the man thrust his hand in the air and exclaimed, Excelsior! Before driving away and disappearing into the traffic. The blue-eyed shinobi could not say why, but the words filled him with encouragement. One that kept on even when he returned to Jean and Ororo, who were busy with the receptionist. So, you're Miss Gray, Miss Monroe, and Mr. Uzumaki. The location of these patients is being kept secret from the public. That includes the press. I don't think I need to tell you that the hospital and the government wants to keep it that way, warned the receptionist. We won't betray Sue's trust, ma'am, said Jean before walking over to the elevator. Even when they got to the floor, the reception seemed to be guarded. Men that looked to be straight out of the Secret Service were on the floor lobby. 2 more were stationed at either side of the door where Susan was supposedly resting. The guards asked for their identification again before they grudgingly opened the door. Naruto did not know what he expected to see when he entered the hospital room. Given the severity of the news and Jean's anxiousness, he half expected to see a severely burned Susan, or at least with half her limbs missing. The last thing he thought he'd see was exactly what lay in front of him. Susan was as normal and beautiful as the day he'd seen her. Sue! Are you all right? Jean exclaimed, almost rushing to the bed where the blonde had been busy reading a book. As good as I can be, answered Susan, a warm smile inviting them to come closer. Thanks for visiting. It's kind of hard with how we've been quarantined. That's not a problem, said Naruto, almost buried in the gifts. The older blonde almost laughed at the sight of him. You didn't need to bring anything. Of course, we did, said Jean while setting down the flowers by the window. I remember being on the hospital bed and wanting something from the outside. A whisk of nature does wonders for your health, agreed Ororo. I'm grateful, said Susan. We're always here for a friend, Sue, said Naruto as he set down all the gifts. He wanted nothing more than to go ahead and give a flurry of questions to the blonde, but Ororo's little lessons on tact were telling him not to. How are you feeling? He asked instead. Susan tried her best to smile assuredly, but something seemed to be digging into her. I'm doing well. You don't look that different at all, said Jean as carefully as she could. I mean, when we heard you were in that spacecraft, we expected you to be burned and mutilated beyond recognition, Susan finished, not even looking angry. I guess I was lucky. I feel bad about what happened with Reed and Ben. I don't want to sound rude, Susan. But what possessed you to go into space just like that? Jean asked as politely as she possibly could. Susan sighed, looking outside the window, deep in thought. I guess you could call it being misguided. Now that I think about it, it was foolish. Jean bit back a smile. I can understand that, when it comes down to it, sometimes you don't even know why you bother. You try as hard as you can, but he's so thick-headed? Oblivious? Sometimes you think that you're only talking to yourself, continued Susan, the smile finally reaching her eyes. He never really seems to notice or listen, agreed Jean. At this point, Naruto did not know what they were talking about, but still responded. I always listen to you, Jean. Ororo too. He smiled sheepishly. I can listen to Susan as well. Jean giggled a little. Of course, you do. Susan sighed tiredly. I guess you want to know about what we did, up there. Nobody said anything, but it was clear that the 3 visitors were anticipating an explanation. The short story is, we went to space with a starship that Reed built. He mostly funded it with his own money, but the rest was government money. After initial interest, they wanted to pull out of the project and Reed decided to use it himself before it was shut down. He got his military friend, Ben Grimm, to pilot it, but he needed 2 more people. You and Johnny, Ororo finished. Susan nodded. I had already read ahead, despite only recently starting college, but Reed was desperate, we agreed to go. She took a deep breath. It started out fine at first, it was a really good ship, but something happened that Reed did not foresee. The debris hit you? Asked Jean. That's what the news said it was. A cover-up, revealed Susan. We were hit by heavy levels of radiation. We did not know where it came from, but it was massive. How are you still alive? Asked Jean. Susan looked at her hand like it was a foreign object. You can say we survived, but not unscathed. Cancer? Cell damage? Asked Ororo. No, something different. What happened? Asked Naruto. It's not my place to say, but let's just say that we all changed, sighed Susan. Even if you can't see it with the naked eye. She looked really uncomfortable at that moment, so much so that Naruto inadvertently put his hand on her shoulder. Don't worry. We understand. He could feel the warmth of her shoulder. Closing her eyes, Susan tried to shake her head. I don't think you can. It's unnatural. We won't judge a friend, Sue, Jean assured, also putting her hand on the blonde's shoulder. It's very hard to explain. Tears could be seen spilling from her closed eyes. I guess. I just need to show you. It was like Susan started to disappear, turning more and more transparent until only her silhouette could be seen with the naked eye. Eventually, even that went away. The only thing that could even show that she was in the room was the fact that the hospital gown still clung to the body like it was floating on air. The rest of the room was speechless as they saw this. Even when Susan became visible again, they did not say a word. That's what happened to me. I don't know why or what else, it just happened. Susan looked down at her lap, refusing to meet their gaze. Jean let the blonde have a few moments before she hugged Susan closely. It's nothing to be ashamed of, she said, fingers drawing circles on Susan's back. I don't know how to deal with this. And Ben. Oh God, poor Ben. Sue, Jean said, you're not alone. Once she had Susan's attention, she concentrated on one of the flowers and levitated it, drawing it to her before giving it to the older woman. We know exactly what you're going through. What? Susan gasped, blue eyes wide as they scanned over to Ororo and Naruto. Naruto held his hand and let a bit of visible blue chakra envelop it. His blue eyes turned red with one tomo on each orb. Ororo on the other hand created a small tornado on her palm, vanishing it after a few seconds. We're quite similar to you, only our powers didn't necessitate radiation, explained Ororo. So, you're mutants. Our genes have mutated from normal humans to give us special abilities, explained Jean. You're not much different when you think about it. Your genes have probably mutated. You just needed a little push. Are there more of you? Asked Susan. There are. More and more show up each day, revealed Jean. I was the first of Professor Xavier's students. Then Scott came along, and then Ororo, said dark-skinned mutant nodded, and finally Naruto. I see. I must seem foolish to you then, complaining about such a thing, said Susan sheepishly. Jean shook her head. Not at all. It was difficult for all of us to accept it at first. Not for me, thought Naruto, but did not air it. But that's because I grew up with the fact that I had such abilities. For people on this planet, it's far different to know you've been gifted, or cursed, with such powers. Does it get better? I've sometimes been doing stuff without being able to control it. Ororo nodded with a smile. It takes practice. We learn about our powers day by day, it gets easier and easier. Susan looked out the window again. This time, a fierce determination was brewing behind those blue eyes. When she looked back at them, a strong voice said, You're right. I will do it. I will do my best. The door opened in that moment and a tall, young man with eyes and hair similar to Susan stormed in. Hey Sue. You're not gonna believe this. I went to Ben's room and, hey, Johnny, Susan sighed. What did you do now? Forget that. I didn't know we had visitors, and it's Ororo, too. The weather manipulator looked at Johnny with some condescension. As much as someone as kind-hearted as Ororo could muster. Good afternoon, Johnny. I missed you when I was in space, babe. Now I got myself all wounded and hurt up, Johnny despaired mockingly. Can't you help me with a get-well kiss? Johnny! Susan yelled. Don't flirt with my friends. What? Johnny asked innocently. I'm asking nice, Sue. He then looked over to Naruto. Hey, I don't think I've ever seen you before. I should know a fellow blonde when I see one. Naruto couldn't help but compare Johnny to a combination of Kiba and Erosenin. Quickly he shook the other blonde's hand. Naruto Uzumaki. I'm gonna be starting at Bayville soon. We'll see each other then. I gotta go before. Johnny growled a low, almost inhuman voice from outside the room. "See ya!" yelled Johnny before running out. The door did not close, however, and a nurse soon came in the room to run some diagnostics on Susan. "I must inform you that visiting hours are over now. You can come back tomorrow." They all said their goodbyes to Susan, assuring that they'd visit as much as they could. "I'm going to see what they have planned out. Reed says that we may become a team of sorts after it's all done. I'll keep in contact with you. Hope to see you again." When Naruto exited the room, he saw a tall, older-looking man sitting in one of the chairs. The man's world seemed to be consumed only by the mountain of texts in front of him. The shinobi had to call him out a few times before he managed to shake off his concentration. "Hello," he said to Naruto. "I'm Dr. Richards. I assume you're one of Susan's friends." He looked much older than the rest of them, almost 20 years. He even had gray hairs on his sideburns and seemed to carry himself with an air of knowledge. "Yes, I am," responded the Jinchuriki. "But I'm also Naruto Uzumaki. Professor Xavier told you about me?" "Ah, Naruto. I am sorry that I could not get to your case sooner. The professor told me about you, but I was too busy with my own disastrous project. Now I am occupied with fixing that unfortunate outcome," said Reed. "Do you mind if you visit me around next month? I might have something for you." "Sure. I'll be waiting." It was hard to say those words. Naruto wanted to know how to get home as soon as possible, but looking back at Araro and Jean, not to mention his talk with Susan, he guessed it wouldn't be too bad to stay some more time before he found a way back home. Before they went back to the mansion, they decided to take advantage of the fact that they'd come all the way to the city and went to eat at a Japanese-themed restaurant. The idea of freshly made ramen was too good to pass for Naruto. "I think it's admirable," said Jean. "Trying to use your powers for the good of others. Scientists and doctors have gifts that they use to better mankind. Some of them use it only to benefit themselves," Ororo reminded. "That's why the good ones exist. To protect the innocent from the bad ones," countered Jean. "Like Logan and the professor." Back home, Naruto interrupted. "We had the leader of our village who was called the Hokage." Jean and Ororo looked at him but did not interrupt. The Hokage means the fire shadow. Each of our villages had their own Kage, their own shadow, to protect them. Before he died, the third told me that the Hokage cares for everyone in the village as if they were his own family. The Hokage lives for the village, and the village lives for the Hokage. Someone they can trust to do what is right. "What do you mean?" asked Jean. "It means that your city seems to have no Kage. No shadow. No protector." "We have the police and the mayor," said Jean. "But they do not stand as a symbol for the village. An agent of justice and righteousness. They are hamstringed by other and can't do their jobs," insisted Naruto. "You want to use your powers to protect the city?" asked Ororo. "What if the city turns against you?" Naruto looked down for a moment. He remembered his in Konoha. The insults and the put-downs. The belief that he'd never amount to anything. But he also remembered his friends, and his enemies, and Arosenin, Tsunade-bachan, Sakura-chan, Kakashi, Gaara, Haku, Zabuza, Konohamaru, the old man. "Sasuke. You just have to believe, and try your best until you convince them otherwise." His tone was final. Despite their earlier interrogation, both Ororo and Jean smiled at him. For some reason or another, Naruto felt a lot older than he was, and those warm smiles made him tingle inside in a way that not even Sakura had been able to before. "So," said Jean. "What would be your name?" "My name? Well, Ororo calls herself Storm. Logan calls himself Wolverine. Even Scott has decided to give himself the name Cyclops. You need a name to protect your real identity. What would be your name?" Naruto thought about it. Nobody kept their identity secret back home. They did gain some nicknames from their feats on the battlefield, everyone knew their real names. "I dunno," said Naruto. "What about you, Jean?" The redhead smirked before answering. "Marvel Girl." Naruto did not say anything in fear that Jean would take it wrongly and stop talking to him. That would be a bad thing. He'd been getting closer and closer to Jean. Scott's indifference seemed to be driving her to get closer to the Jinchuriki instead for friendship. He didn't want to lose her just as he didn't want to lose his relationship with Ororo. His white-haired friend did not say anything either, but he did notice a slight twitch on her lip before she answered with "It sounds good." Their talk was cut short by the news on the TV that billionaire Tony Stark was being reported missing on the Middle East after a demonstration of a weapon. "Killed by your own tools of destruction," Ororo said with a trace of disgust. "I believe that there is some justice to that. They don't know if he's dead." "Just missing," reminded Jean. Before Naruto could say his own thing, he saw something from the corner of his now red eye. His first instinct was to grab both Ororo and Jean, pulling them down on the table before a couple of stray bullets entered the restaurant. One person behind them was hit, but a quick look told Naruto that it had been a shoulder wound, not lethal. The gunshots began to get louder, coming from the bank that was on the other side of the street. A quick peek from the stone wall told the Sharingan user that the culprits were 3 men, armed with assault rifles. A couple of cops lay in the streets, one wounded, the other dead. Naruto's military instincts took over, and immediately jumped into the fray. "Stay down," he ordered to both Jean and Ororo, before running towards the robbers. "Naruto, no!" Jean shouted from behind, but he ignored her. The robbers were distracted with the wounded cop, so they did not see as he grabbed the manhole cover and threw it like a disc at the nearest thug. The blonde barely had the time to see the first gunman fall like a sack of potatoes before the other two turned their attention to him, as well as their weapons. Naruto quickly took cover behind a car. "You little shit," one of them said before he started to unload his rifle at the vehicle. Naruto effortlessly shunsoned to the furthest thug and kicking him straight in the head so hard that the shinobi could hear the skull crack. The last one barely had time to react before Naruto was right on his face and grabbing the rifle. He used the barrel to swing it like a club, hitting the thug on the temple with the sharp butt. He was out before he even hit the ground. "CA, Captain Stacy," the wounded cop gurgled. "C call." He was pointing at the radio of his fallen partner. Naruto took the hint and grabbed the radio. "Captain Stacy?" he yelled into it. "That's not my codename, Rodriguez." Came the answer, "Report. And I'm not a cop." Naruto snarked. "Your guy is down and he needs an ambulance." There was a short silence before the voice answered back. "Stay in the area, civilian. Wait for the ambulance to show up." "Naruto!" Jean screamed, running out of the store and embracing him tightly. Ororo was right behind her. "We have to get out of here," said the weather manipulator. The cops said. "We can't get involved," interrupted Ororo. "We have to get back to the mansion." Naruto nodded before he dropped the radio and followed them out of the scene. He had no idea how much they ran, but he stopped once he saw that Ororo and Jean were panting. They had good physical condition, but he was particularly energetic, even for a shinobi. "What were you thinking?" snapped Jean. "What?" "I was thinking about saving that cop and stopping the bad guys," answered Naruto. "You could have died," Jean yelled. "Did you think for a moment about yourself? About your own safety?" "I was too busy thinking about the cop they were about to execute," exclaimed Naruto. "I saved him." "Isn't that what we've been talking about? Saving lives?" Jean's anger seemed to dissipate after a few breaths before she embraced him again. "It's just, I don't know what I'd do if you were harmed. How could I live with myself if I let you die?" Naruto smiled as he held her. "I'm alright, Jean. I promise you that I won't die on you." He let go of her and looked into those jade eyes. "I don't break my promises, ever." Jean turned a little red for a moment before she started to breathe deeply. "I'll go get us a cab, and you'll have to explain this to the professor." The blonde nodded, looking at the sky with a smile before he felt another smaller, yet equally tender hug from Ororo. "That was a brave thing you did, Naruto," she said. "Not many people are so instinctively selfless." "You are selfless yourself," replied Naruto, returning the hug and letting that fresh aroma of nature fill his senses. It was a strange feeling going back to the mansion, all 3 of them packed in the rear seat. They did not even speak to each other, yet the comfortable silence was enough for Naruto. It was the first time since arriving in this place that he did not think of Konoha or worry about returning back home. In fact, it was the first time since arriving that he felt that being then and there was home. "The more I'm here, the less I think about Konoha. The more I'm with Scott and Logan, the less I think about my friends, and the more I'm with Jean and Ororo, the less I think about Sakura-chan. It was a feeling that Naruto knew would be gone soon. By tomorrow, he'd be looking forward to answers from Reed Richards and a way to return, but for now his subconscious thought of one thing and one thing only. What if I don't want to return? Chapter 5, Birth of a Hero. If Naruto had been told a year ago that he'd not only be spending more time at the Shinobi Academy, for 4 more years at least, on top of that, he would have despaired and brooded in such a way that Sasuke would have filed for a lawsuit. He'd never been one for theoretical knowledge, at least not when he toiled away at the academy. He was always the kind of person that learned through practice and contact, the kind of person that needed his lessons to be beaten into him by force. Once that was done, Naruto could say that he was kind of a genius. It's just that nobody had managed to do something similar with his mind. That was, until Jean Grey came into his life. "Just remember our lessons and you'll be alright," said the redhead as the bus stopped at a large campus. On its center was Bayville High School. "You're smart, even if you don't believe it yourself. I'm sure you will do great in here." "Guess I'll just do my best," Naruto replied, tingles running over his body at Jean's words. It looked far grander than the Shinobi Academy, that's for sure. The main building was at least 4 times as big as the Shinobi Academy, and that was not even mentioning the various other structures. Jean had assured him that there was a basketball court where she played for the school's female team. She did so as well for the soccer team. There was a football team. "You should apply," Jean had told him. "I think the sport is perfect for you. That or soccer. Just remember to keep your abilities in check." "Do you?" "Of course," she responded. "I'm proud to say that my sportsmanship is all natural." The doors of the bus opened and all the students exited the large, yellow vehicle. Ororo was the first to leave the closed-off space, but still waited for them to exit as well. "I can't wait to get my license," Scott grumbled, adjusting his glasses. "I'll never ride the bus again." "That goes for the 2 of us," agreed Naruto. He was not interested in just cars though. Ever since he saw Logan riding his own motorcycle, he'd been fascinated. In the end he knew Naruto was faster on his 2 legs, but once he got used to being in the cars, he understood the appeal. "You all have your schedules?" asked Ororo. They all nodded. "This is where we split off then." Naruto had been told that he was a freshman, a newbie. Scott and Jean were 1 year ahead as sophomores. Ororo was 1 year further, a junior. To the blonde, it felt like he was starting his academy lessons all over again. Still, Naruto thought, it could be a chance to do it right this time. Jean said I was smart, maybe I should truly try my best. The sound of a loud engine drew all their attention. At the helm of an expensive-looking sports car was Johnny Storm, recently out of the hospital and more than likely willing to tell the school about how he single-handedly saved the world from an alien invasion. "Hey guys!" yelled the older blonde. "Nice to see you here. Sue sends her regards." "Now if you excuse me," he said with a busty brunette on his arm, "I gotta get to class." Given his age, Johnny was a senior, his last year before graduating, and was looking pretty ecstatic about the possibility of going out on his own. He already had his future fixed in a way. Susan had told them that the 4 involved in the space incident would be staying at a place called the Baxter Building. Naruto would be visiting the place soon to find out what Dr. Reed could do about his situation. It was supposedly right in the middle of New York City, and the professor would be accompanying him. "Well, it's time for all of us to split," said Jean. "You don't want to be late on your first day, Naruto, right?" Naruto nodded as he walked at the main building. "We can see each other at lunch break," said Ororo before going to her own class. Naruto nodded before he started to search for his own classroom. It was confusing at first compared to the academy. Back in Konoha, there was only 1 room for the entire class. With the number of students all in the same year, Bayville had to make several different schedules on different hours in order to accommodate all of them efficiently. It was understandable, but no less frustrating. Finally, the Jinchuriki found the classroom and entered and was relieved to find that it was only half full, the instructor still not present. He sat down on one of the desks and looked at his curriculum. Biology, literature, math, among others. Sure, it was similar to the Shinobi Academies, but the use of it seemed different. In Bayville, biology was used to find out how the body worked and as an early guide to aspiring doctors and physicians. Back in Konoha, it was taught so that the students could figure out the exact location of vital organs and thus, an easier way to eliminate their opponents as quickly and as decisively as possible. "Good morning, class," said the female teacher as she entered. "I hope you enjoyed your summer break." "I sure did, but it's time to get back to your education." She then looked at Naruto. "But before we start, I would like to introduce our new exchange student, Mr. Uzumaki." Naruto looked a little confused when everyone looked at him, but he stood once he got the hint. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki from Japan. Honored to meet you," he said to the class with a small bow before sitting down. There were a few murmurs, especially from the female population, but it was soon quieted by the teacher who proceeded to start the class. It was literature class, and despite being new to the English language, Naruto was confident enough to say that he would have no problem in getting top grades. After a reading assignment, his class grabbed their science textbooks and went to another classroom. A large man soon entered the classroom. "Good morning." Despite his size, the teacher's voice was calm and soft. "My name is Henry McCoy, and I will be your science teacher for the near future. Hopefully, you're as enthused as I am to unearth the mystery's life." Cammy, this guy, and the ring-eyed old man would get along well. The subject was still fascinating once you got through the professor's vocabulary. Against every single fabric of reality, Naruto actually found himself paying attention as Dr. McCoy explained what they would be seeing throughout the year, from physics to chemistry, biology, among other, more intricate scientific subjects. Not to mention that the study of them could end the mystery of what brought him here. Reed Richards was a physics expert, after all. The blonde approached the large teacher as he sat writing on the desk. "Dr. McCoy?" Henry looked up. Naruto simply held his hand. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki." "Ah, yes, how can I help you?" responded the teacher. "I want to know more about physics," Naruto said quickly. "About space, and stars, and how you travel through them." "Anything." Dr. McCoy put his hands up and chuckled. "Patience, patience. I can point you to some beginner's texts for the time being. You should be able to find them in the library." He started to scribble on a note. "I must say, I'm quite elated that youth like yourself would be fascinated by the intricacies of physics. I expect much from you." Naruto took the note with a smile. "Basic stuff, but it was something." "Thanks," he exclaimed before leaving the classroom and hurrying over to the cafeteria. It was packed and noisy, a mixture of returning students trying to catch up with their friends as well as newer ones trying to strike conversation with anyone, lest they be labeled as antisocial early on in their high school freshman year. Naruto searched for a moment before he spied Ororo's telltale white hair, its owner sitting down with the easily recognizable Jean and Scott. "Hey," Naruto greeted, sitting down with his tray. "Having a good first day?" asked Ororo. "Good enough. These subjects aren't half bad, actually," he replied. "I told you you'd be great," said Jean. "You've met Dr. McCoy?" "Yeah, he's great," exclaimed Naruto. "I'd never thought physics could be so interesting until I met him. Even recommended some reading." Their chatter was interrupted by the arrival of a big, blonde-haired guy. "Hey Jean," he said with an arrogant and somewhat slimy voice. "Nice to see you again." He sat down next to the redhead and put his burly hand around Jean. Naruto instantly hated this guy. "Hey Duncan," said Jean. The guy had a name. Naruto instantly hated Duncan. "Why don't we go off to my table, sweetheart? All the guys are there." Looking at his side, Naruto saw that apparently Ororo hated Duncan too. Not that he'd hold that against her. "See you later?" Jean asked, a little embarrassed before being slowly pulled by the Duncan. Looking back, the redhead gave them apologetic looks. "That guy has giant sticks stick up his ass," said Naruto. "I don't know what Jean sees in him," agreed Ororo, not even reprimanding Naruto's choice of words. "Hey, Naruto," called a new voice. Turning his head, the Jinchuriki saw that another, friendlier blonde was coming over. "Hey, Johnny. Having a good day?" Naruto did not stop looking at Jean and Duncan even when greeting Sue's little brother. "Pretty good. Trouble in paradise?" asked Johnny, apparently tracing a line from Naruto's eyesight to where Jean was sitting by Duncan. Naruto sneered a little. "Not for long." He waited for Jean to stand up and head over to refill her empty glass and promptly concentrated on Duncan, drinking from a small carton of milk obnoxiously. The carton suddenly exploded on Duncan's face, covering it and the upper part of his uniform in milk. The big guy spluttered and choked a little before the entire cafeteria starting laughing at him. He looked confused at first before he got embarrassed and growled at his friends to shut up. From the sidelines, Jean just watched the spectacle, looking like she was debating between staying back and going over to help her humiliated boyfriend. Naruto just laughed with the rest. Even Johnny joined. Scott could not look more satisfied, and Aurora was doing her best to hit a concealed smirk before giving him the almost obligatory reprimand. Naruto, you must learn to use your powers responsibly, and keep them hidden as best as you can. I am using them responsibly, Naruto smirked. Nobody's gonna notice the small things, unless you're a ninja. The laughs finally stopped when Duncan left for the bathroom. A sheepish-looking Jean then walked back to their table and sat down beside Naruto like she had never left. The Jinchuriki couldn't help the megawatt smile that crept on his lips. Yeah. I think I'm gonna like high school more than the academy. Saturday came with a cloudy day. The breeze and slightly chilly wind were clear indicators that autumn had arrived. It was slightly strange to Naruto. Back in Konoha, the weather seemed to change only slightly when the seasons turned. He doubted that he even remembered if it snowed in Hinokuni. The entire country almost always had the feeling of an eternal spring. New York State, on the other hand, changed quite rapidly with the seasons. He made sure to grab a light sweater, at Jean's insistence of course, before he left his room and walked over to the professor's office. Today was the day he'd finally receive answers. He was going to the Baxter building to meet Dr. Reed. I'm ready, Professor. Naruto yelled, barging into the room. He immediately noticed the professor sitting behind the desk. The shinobi noticed that every inhabitant of the X-mansion was there. Looking at the unfamiliar and strange figure sitting in one of the chairs, he found out why. Ah, if it isn't our missing student, drawled Professor Xavier. The rest of them were sending Naruto disapproving looks for his borderline rude entrance. Might I introduce to you our new student? Guten Morgen, said the blue, fuzzy-looking man. I am Kurt Wagner. He thrust out his hand for a handshake. Naruto noticed that he only had 3 long fingers instead of the normal 5. Naruto did not even hesitate to take the furry hand and shake it firmly. Thank Kami. I am no longer the newbie. Naruto Uzumaki, by the way. It's a pleasure to meet you. Kurt's voice was a mixture of happiness and relief, as if he had expected another type of answer than the one he got. Naruto knew that appearances could be deceiving. This Kurt fellow seemed to be friendly and innocent enough. Naruto, interrupted the professor. You've been with us for some months. I expect you to help the rest of us to help Kurt to settle in. He's also in your school year and in your classes. Professor? Asked Kurt. What do you mean with classes? I cannot go outside looking like this. I have a solution for that. The professor retrieved a wristwatch from his desk and handed it to the blue mutant. Kurt looked at the device curiously before putting it on. Almost instantly, he transformed into a normal-looking person. The bone structure and head hair remained the same, but the 3 fingers were replaced with 5 and the blue, furry skin turned white. I don't believe it. The newly transformed German teen exclaimed. I look normal. You can thank Dr. Richards for that little gadget, said the professor. Speaking of, it's time for me and Naruto to go meet him. Give me a few minutes while I get the last things ready. Naruto nodded before looking at Kurt with a grin. So, what's your power? He asked excitedly. Oh. Right. Kurt said before he disappeared with a flash and some smoke. Naruto noticed how similar it looked to when his Kage Bunshin were dispelled, leaving behind the stench of sulfur. Up here! Came the accented voice of Kurt. Looking up, Naruto saw that the new mutant was on the roof. Another flash and he appeared right in front the blonde shinobi. What's yours? Leave it to another time. Jean intervened. You don't want to see Naruto's abilities indoors, believe me. You hurt my soul, Jean. Naruto whined before he used his mind to levitate a nearby vase. I've gotten a lot better. You have. I was talking about the other ones. The Chakura ones. Chakra, Jinchan. He did not know where the chan came from, but it sounded nice when combined with the redhead's name. Anyways, I have to go with the professor. say hi to Sue for us," yelled Jean as he left. "Good luck, Naruto," said Aurora. "I'll come back tonight, guys." Naruto waved them goodbye while rushing down to the entrance of the mansion, seeing that a fancy black car had already been stationed in the driveway. He waited for Professor Xavier to show up. "Are you ready?" asked the older telepath. Naruto nodded rapidly. "Good. Hopefully, traffic won't be as unforgiving as it usually is." Given that it was New York City, Naruto had very little hope for that. Nevertheless, he entered the back of the car and was surprised to see that Logan would be the driver. "I must instill in you the idea that you may not get an answer you might want," said the professor. "There are many mysteries to unveil in the realm of science. So many that not even a brilliant mind like Reed Richards knows everything." Naruto nodded slowly. "I understand, Professor, but I still wanted just how the hell I got here to begin with." "Understandable. Whatever the case, I trust you know that you will always stay welcome at the Institute." "Thanks," said Naruto. The thoughts of the previous month were returning to him. He didn't mind staying for more time with his new friends. Even with having to go to school again, it was like a chance to try again, to not be the class dead last. To get some respect and knowledge. But his friends were still back home. "You've been getting closer with Jean and Aurora." The professor's voice broke Naruto's thoughts. Naruto did his best to stop the pink flush. "I guess I have." "You're a real ladies' man, kid," came the sarcastic voice of Logan, but Xavier ignored him. "That's a good thing. It's healthy to make relationships with new people after you have lost so much. I do hope you continue to make friends as more students come along." "More students?" The professor nodded. "I managed to find Kurt and the rest of you, but Cerebro seems to be picking new readings every day. I'd say that by the time the year is over, we'll have at least a few more young mutants with us." Naruto grinned. The idea of new people did interest him, especially after speaking with Kurt Wagner. Maybe the other guys wouldn't be as silent as Scott, and hopefully the girls would be just as nice as Jean and Aurora. "Naruto." The professor's tone had changed to a more serious one. "I have not used my mind to get any information out of you, and I'd like to think that you can trust me." Naruto nodded carefully, a little nervous about what the older telepath might ask. "I would like to know what you did back in your home. What was the last thing that happened before you traveled here?" Naruto pursed his lips a little but eventually decided to finally say it. He was afraid of what his new friends might think about his occupation, along with the hatefully entity of pure chakra sealed inside him, but finally decided to say his story. "Some of it at least. Where I come from, the nations are divided by agreed-to borders, just like this planet. There are 5 big ones, though, the most important of them all." The professor kept looking at him, and Logan was visibly interested while behind the wheel. "I was born into one of these. The land of fire. Hai no Kuni, in our language. Each of the 5 great nations has a hidden village ruled over by a Kage. I came from the Kanahagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the leaves. The Hokage was our ruler." "Ruler?" Logan asked. "He was not elected by the people?" "The new Hokage is chosen by the previous one. The daimyo then confirms the decision. If the Hokage passes away before nominating a successor, then the village council decides who will be the new Hokage." "So, he was a military dictator?" Logan questioned gruffly. Naruto grew angry immediately. The old man was not a dictator. He was a great man and powerful warrior. So was Caesar, kid. Call a spade a spade. The Sandaime led our forces to victory in the Third Shinobi World War. Naruto yelled his reply. And the Yondaime defeated Iwagakure single-handedly. Prevented our village from being destroyed by the Kyuubi. I will become the strongest Hokage one day, believe it. The shinobi felt his mind relax a little, courtesy of the professor. He took a deep breath and stopped yelling. "Let's get back to what you were saying before. What did you do in Konoha?" asked Xavier. "I was a shinobi. I graduated from the academy and was placed on a team as a genin, a low-ranked ninja." "What did you shinobi do?" Naruto thought about it for some time. "Well, we genin did a lot of things. We get assigned missions depending on difficulty, from D rank to S rank. We did many D ranks like walking dogs, catching pets, pulling weeds. Naruto started to remember the utterly boring missions he did before going to Wave. What do the higher missions do? C ranks include protecting convoys, people, clearing out bandits and other non-shinobi, procuring packages. It depends on what the client wants. So, you were mercenaries? Logan asked rudely, but Naruto ignored him in favor of the professor's questions. What did the higher ranks entail? Espionage and assassination. Naruto tried to find a way to say it another way, but there was no avoiding the truth. Both the professor and Logan visibly stiffened, but he continued. B ranks are private clients and A and S ranked missions are given only by the Hokage with the knowledge of the council and elders. They are assigned only to highly ranked jonin, a high ninja, and serve the nation's and village's interest. We still get paid for every mission we complete, though. Logan was the first to break the silence. A village of contract killers, great. Like I told you, Chuck, child soldier. There's no way the kid had moves like that without military training. Naruto, the professor asked with evident sorrow. Have you ever killed before? Naruto shook his head. Not yet. I was still a genin. I did see people die, though. He thought back to Haku and Zabuza. I am a shinobi, it's part of the job. It's still a hard thing for one so young to see, said the bald telepath. I trust you know that killing without the government's permission is a crime here. It was the same in Konoha, but I was an agent of the government, if you can say that. The professor looked deep in thought before he aired his next question. You mentioned a Kubi. What is that? Naruto almost choked. I'd rather keep that to myself, Professor. Professor Xavier looked like he wanted to know more but nodded his head. I understand. Professor? Naruto asked. Does this change anything? Will I have to leave the mansion? The thought of not seeing Jean or Ororo again gave him an uncomfortable feeling. He did not want to be separated from them. The professor simply smiled reassuringly. The school is always open for mutants in need. You are still welcome to stay with us, Naruto. Take it from me, kid, Logan grunted. Chuck is too forgiving for his own good. He stopped the car. We're here. The Baxter building was truly imposing. One of the largest structures Naruto had seen in the entire city. It looked to be almost brand new, yet Naruto knew that it had been renovated extensively. It boasted 35 stories, and in the highest of them all, rested a giant symbol, the number 4. It fit the name that Susan and Johnny told him about, the Fantastic Four. Comprised of Reed Richards as the leader, Ben Grimm, Susan, and Johnny Storm, the group had been making the rounds on the local media. Some outlets called them a visionary new team that could help the nation and the world with their abilities, not to mention Dr. Richards' expertise. Other tabloids were content with calling them thugs and criminals. Once they were allowed entrance, they walked to the elevator and were taken to the 30th floor. Naruto barely had time to step out before he was welcomed by a warm and familiar voice. Naruto! Susan welcomed while sitting down on one of the lobby sofas, a book on her hand. She immediately stood up and hurried over to hug the shinobi. God, you grow taller every day. Naruto smirked. Ororo has been insistent on me eating my meat and veggies. He was a little miffed that his ramen consumption had fallen to dangerously low levels, but his body was certainly agreeing with the weather manipulator's diet. In the few months since he arrived, he'd grown a total of 6 inches and he was still developing. You look better every day, Sue. Jean and Ororo say hello. Naruto returned the hug. Greet them back for me. The blonde woman then smiled and held out her hands. Look at this, new powers. There was a visible force that was emitted from her palms, almost like a force field. Nice! Exclaimed Naruto. Before he could say any more, Charles Xavier cleared his throat. Good afternoon, Miss Storm. We are looking for Dr. Reed. Is he available? The professor asked gently. Naruto could almost see the tick of frustration that formed on Susan's brow. Oh, he's available all right, always available, always willing to pay attention to you, if you happen to be a machine, or a book, or a computer or... She sighed, stopping her frustrated rant. Sorry. He'll be at the 33rd floor. You have our thanks, said the professor before turning back to the elevator. Before Naruto followed him though, he heard Susan continue her rant. Seriously? What the hell does it take for a girl to get noticed? Cooking? He just ate it while reading. Didn't even compliment. Working with him? He ignores me. Flirting? I get better responses from Iraq. Going to the pool in my riskiest bikini? Didn't even look. Am I just too ugly and dumb? You're not. Naruto exclaimed. You're very pretty and smart. You are one of the smartest people I've met, Sue. Susan looked momentarily stunned before her white face turned a potent crimson. Did I say that out loud? She whispered. It took a few seconds for realization to hit the Jinchuriki. Oh shit. Naruto thought. Those were her thoughts. He started to wave his hands desperately, face also turning red. I didn't, what I mean to say is, Naruto, said Xavier. Coming with us? Naruto jumped at the professor's direction with barely a sorry, see you later to Susan. He didn't even know he was holding his breath until the elevator door closed again. Your powers are growing. Expect more training from now on to avoid such confrontations, warned the professor. Naruto simply nodded. Dr. Reed Richards was sitting on a desk when the trio of mutants stepped out of the elevator. The genius seemed to not even notice that they were there, content to tinker with some device in front of him. It was not until Naruto stepped in front of the leader of the Fantastic Four that he managed to look away from his business. Professor Xavier greeted Reed. Welcome to the Baxter Building. A pleasure, replied the professor. I believe you said you had some information concerning Naruto's arrival? I believe my exact words were that I might have something, said Reed. The mutants barely blinked as his hand stretched to grab a laptop of some sort on the other side of the room and brought it to the desk. I will need some testimony from Mr. Uzumaki's part. Naruto nodded and started to relay the information of what had happened. I was part of a team that was sent to retrieve my teammate. He had defected the village. In the end, it was only him against me. We tried to finish the battle with our strongest attacks. Naruto did a demonstration by creating a clone and molding a Rasengan in his palm. Dr. Reed looked at the technique with a large pair of eyes, rapidly taking notes on his computer while still paying rapt attention to what the blonde shinobi was saying. Once our techniques met, it all changed. At first, I could only see light, but then I started to see more and more. I didn't know what they were then, but now I know that they were stars, planets, and galaxies. I was floating on space by myself at an incredible speed, then I crashed here, Naruto finished. That's quite a story, said Reed. Tell me, is there a way you can recreate your opponent's attack? The Chidori? Naruto sighed. I doubt it. It was a variation of Kakashi-sensei's technique. I don't even know any lightning jutsu. I can maybe try, but without any instruction from my sensei, I can't really go forward with shinobi techniques. This chakra you mentioned. What is it? Questioned Reed. Naruto tried to remember Irika's lessons. It's a combination of physical energy and spiritual energy. You need to mold them together in order to create a jutsu. Dr. Reed concentrated on the information for just a moment before he laid out his hypothesis. It is my belief that the combination of both of your techniques is what managed to bring you here. I cannot confirm this without evidence, and for that evidence I need to see the other technique. He gave a frustrated look towards Naruto. I regret to inform you that without both of these elements, as well as the appropriate environment, I cannot recreate the phenomenon. So, I can't go back, Naruto said bluntly. Never underestimate the possibilities of science, Mr. Uzumaki. I will try to see if I can advance with your Rasengan alone. However, as much as it frustrates me, I will say that at times when conventional science and knowledge fails, the mystic arts can give an answer. Dr. Strange. I'll see if I can locate him, said Professor Xavier. I am sorry that I cannot give a satisfactory answer. For the time being, I suggest that you acclimate yourself to living here, Mr. Uzumaki, said Reed. I guess, Naruto grunted, looking at the floor, hands clenched in frustration. I've heard of your scholarly achievements, informed Reed. I believe you have a great future ahead of you. Just a fluke, denied Naruto. Back at home I was always the dead last. I'm dumb, always have been. The only talent I have is fighting. I don't think that's gonna be much use to you. All of us have a different way of learning. The method that applies to one may not apply to the other. I believe that you have a great mind hidden inside you, assured Reed. You have a blank slate, kid. Many people wished they had an opportunity like that, interjected Logan. Naruto sighed. I need a minute outside. I understand. The Baxter building is always open to you, Naruto, said Reed before he went back to tinker with the little device. I'll call you when we're ready to head back, Naruto. I need to speak some more with Dr. Richards, called the professor. Naruto barely nodded before he took the elevator and went back to the ground floor, instantly walking outside while looking at the floor. I can't go back? That's impossible. I need to go back. Erosenin and Biechan are still out there, waiting for me. I promised Sakura I would bring back Sasuke. I promised everyone that I'd become the next Hokage. The Jinchuriki kicked a can of empty soda all the way to a nearby park, sitting on one of the benches. He soon found out that it was occupied by two older men. One of them was very familiar. Hey, kiddo! He exclaimed the old man while he elbowed the other one. This one looked even older, with a big, fat cigar on one hand. With the other hand, he was drawing what Naruto had to admit was a pretty good illustration. Old man? Is that you? Naruto asked, still surprised that he managed to find the same person as before in a city as big as this one. I sure am, kiddo. What's happening? You seem little down. Naruto did not know why he trusted this kindly old man with this information, but he told his plight. Everything, including the things he hadn't even mentioned to the professor, or even Jean and Ororo. That's quite a pickle, young man, grumbled the man. But, what about what you have now? What do you mean? Well, you can be anything you want to be now. You are young and full of possibilities. But I want to be Hokage, Naruto whined. My first memories are of me wanting to be the Hokage. And why did you want that? To prove to your village that you were the best? Bah! I'm asking what you really wanted all this time, prodded the old man. You must have something you want deep down. Naruto thought back to Haku. I guess. I want to be wanted. I want the whole world to see me and respect me, and to have enough strength to keep my most precious people safe. To know that I'm needed. And you can't find that here? Don't you have friends? Why can't you prove your worth here? Think about what you want. The words made Naruto think. He thought of what he'd do today and tomorrow. He'd go back to the mansion to taste some of Jean's great food, bicker with Logan, train late after hours with Scott on the danger room, get to know Kurt better. He thought of helping Aurora with the garden and how a strange warmth spread all over his body when he stopped smelling the flowers and smelled her instead while looking dumbly at how beautiful she was. He thought of school, of the promise he was showing among his peers and his teachers, imagined being something more than a failure at academics. His mind returned to Jean and that beautiful red hair and green eyes, how comfortable he felt when both their minds connected. I guess I can try, Naruto muttered, standing up and already pumping his fists. Thanks for the pep talk, old man. Take the world by storm, kiddo, maybe not just this one. I hope I can see you again, someday. The blonde started to walk back to the Baxter building, already feeling the professor probing his mind to return. Believe me, you will. Hey kid! Yelled the old man. Naruto turned back to see him pump his arm in the air again. Excelsior! Believe it, geezer! He exclaimed before turning back and running towards the direction of the professor. Teenage ninjas, Jack! Why didn't we ever think of that one? The cigar-smoking man just grumbled and continued to draw. Here's an idea, teenage pirates that can stretch and look for treasure. I can't imagine someone's gotten to that before. It had taken some time for Naruto to get comfortable enough with his chakra control to attempt a summoning. The Kuchios no Jutsu was by far the most demanding technique in his arsenal. The first time he had summoned Gamabunta had required the use of the fox's chakra. Even when he went against Gaara, the Jinchuriki needed to borrow the toxically powerful red chakra from the Kyuubi. He was taking no chances this time. He only needed to get a message through to Erosenin. At least to make Konoha aware of the fact that he was still alive and well. Naruto reached a far part of the mansion grounds and started doing the now familiar hand seals. He modeled as much chakra as he could and concentrated on summoning the orange little toad he'd met before, Gamakichi. Finally, he bit his thumb and slammed his palm on the floor. The blonde barely had time to process the feeling of his chakra being drained instantly before he passed out. The mocking laugh of the nine-tailed fox was the first thing to welcome Naruto as he woke up in the familiar, dank sewer. What the hell? Naruto rubbed his head as he steadily tried to stand up, weakness evident in his entire body. Bahaha! You fool! Jeered Kyuubi. Even for someone as thick-headed as you, that was absolutely idiotic. What happened? I just tried to summon Gamakichi, Naruto groaned. You bellend! Roared Kyuubi. You tried to perform a spacetime ninjutsu across the universe. Do you have any idea how that works? Oh, what am I thinking? Of course not. You're the old man's successor? Bahaha! What's wrong with trying to summon a small toad? Kyuubi almost sighed in desperation. That was a spacetime ninjutsu, Gaki. Time and space. Do you have any idea how fucking far we are from Mount Mayaboku? You need far more chakra than currently have. Even the old man would have difficulty summoning from that distance. Naruto still looked at the massive red fox dumbly. This is what happens when people show advanced techniques to brats like you without explaining the theory. Snapped Kyuubi. Naruto stood up and looked as threateningly as he could. Well, how do you expect me to learn more about chakra and ninjutsu when I don't have anyone to teach me? Not my problem, brat. Spat the fox. With your chakra, maybe we can do it. Naruto suggested. Why should I bother with you? Besides, the old man wants you here for some reason or another. Naruto was a breath away from pulling his hair out in frustration. Then tell the old man to come back here and teach me. You insolent punk. The old man will come when the old man decides to come. Your mental prowess is too weak to communicate with him. Growled the Biju. Until then, keep your mouth shut. The blue-eyed shinobi was about to speak again when he felt his consciousness returning. Naruto! Wake up! It was Kurt's voice, apparently unaware that Naruto had actually fallen unconscious. Dinner is going to get cold. Dinner! What the hell? Apparently 5 hours had passed because looking at the sky, all he could see were the stars. Grumbling, he walked back to the mansion. The first month of school passed by quickly. While he'd tried his best in terms of connecting with the average American high schooler, Naruto still kept to the rest of the institute students. Mainly with Kurt since the German mutant was in all of his classes, they were even both tardy on occasion. He still did spend most of his time with Araro and Jean, though that time was mostly limited to breaks and lunchtime when it came to school. The institute was the same as always. Logan had been pushing them harder and harder now that Kurt had joined the team. What do you think of Nightcrawler? The teleporter asked one day after a session in the danger room. Nightcrawler? Yes, my secret name. Everybody's got one now. Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm, Marvel Girl, though I don't know what Jean was thinking with that one. Don't, Naruto warned, whispering. Don't let her hear you. Sorry. But what do you think about it? He thought for a moment. It sounds nice. I thought so, Kurt stated satisfactorily. You're gonna need to choose as well, if you want to protect your identity, I guess. I'm used to having my name out there. Nobody keeps a secret identity back home, said Naruto. I gotta take a bath and get some dinner. See you in a couple of hours. When he did get to the kitchen, he noticed that it was surprisingly quiet. Granted, he was usually the loudest of the bunch, but he expected a little chatter and someone reprimanding Kurt for teleporting around the place. Surprise! Came the combined loud voices of the mansion's inhabitants, most of them at least. Scott and Logan grunted it lowly. Ha! Naruto was a little surprised to see them all surrounding a cake with 2 big candles on top of it. Combined they made the number 14. Happy birthday, Naruto! Congratulated Jean. Is there something wrong? There was nothing wrong about it all. Smiling, he did his best to resist the tears of joy that were threatening to spill. No, it's just... I'm an orphan. This is the first time I've had people celebrate it. He tried to put the best way possible. The 10th of October is not a day for celebration in Konoha. Well then, we'll always be happy to celebrate it with you, assured Jean. Make a wish. Naruto did not know at first what to wish for. A few weeks back his desire was simply to get back home. Before that it would have been to become Hokage. Now, looking at Jean's sweet smile and Ororo's small one, not to mention the rest of the gathered X-Men, he could even see a barely noticeable smirk from Logan. He had a lot more difficulty coming up with something that he truly wanted. I want to have all those I care about with me, all at the same. He blew the candles and heard the cheers with a smile. The food was even better than usual. The professor had clearly spared no expense in getting the best quality ingredients for the dishes. It was an unusual yet tasty combination of American and Japanese food. What are you thinking about? Questioned Ororo when he'd gone outside for a moment to look at the stars. Just looking, Naruto stated, trying to look at every single one he could count. You know, one of those stars could be my sun. It could, Ororo affirmed. Does it look that much different from this sun? Not really. Is your planet so different that you want to return so quickly? Ororo continued to prod. It's very similar when it really comes down to it, Naruto admitted. But it's my home. I can't just leave it and forget. I left my home too, you know. He turned over to look at Ororo, his heart leaping when he saw just how beautiful the chocolate skin reflected upon the full moon. The white hair turned almost silver and the clear, blue eyes twinkled brighter than the biggest star in the night sky. Did you? Why? Ororo looked down for a moment. Because there was little there for me. My parents died when I was young and I got mixed up with some bad people. I left them, with some help. Despite being stricken by her beauty, Naruto was still paying attention to every word. I traveled along the desert, finally stopping upon a small tribe. I gave them water and they hailed me as a goddess. I lived with them for a few months before the professor offered me a place here. Why did you take it? The white-haired mutant sighed. I don't know at first. I was just curious about coming back to America. This is the country where I was born, after all. But then I met Jean and Scott. Logan, and you, of course. You never think about going back? Questioned Naruto. I do at times. When I go to sleep, but that goes away when I wake up and see the institute. Why? Ororo's smile was the biggest he'd ever seen since he met her. Pearly white teeth shined in the moonlight, almost as white as her hair. She embraced him warmly, her chest beating against his. He instantly smelled the fragrance of nature and his heart thumped even harder. Because I realized that my home is with you. With the people I care about the most. The people that care about me and not about Storm. The people that care about Ororo. She kept on the hug. I remember when I saw you, all bloodied up and close to death, a horrible hole so close to your heart. I still ask myself, why would you want to return to a place like that? He didn't even respond as she parted from him and went back inside. He just looked as she helped Jean pick up the plates with a smile. Naruto's gaze turned back to the stars, trying to find the place he had left off in vain. People that care about Naruto, huh? He looked back at Jean. Sweet, beautiful Jean. But, will they care if they know what's inside me? The summoning had been a disaster, not only because Naruto had failed to get even Gamakichi, but also because it meant that he had no other recourse to get into contact with Konoha. Not being able to get even the smallest word of his survival or location meant one thing. One thing that had been present ever since Reed Richards had asked for a recreation of the Chidori. He had no way of learning more ninjutsu. Naruto was internally cursing his decision to not pay more attention to the Shinobi Library or Irika's lectures. If he had more information of the inner workings of chakra and the ninja arts, he could at least try to get one with that information. Alas, all he had were his few and trusty techniques. The shinobi was aware of the additional talents he'd received when he got to Earth, but they were still mostly a mystery to him. Despite the coolness of being able to move things with his mind, it was utterly useless in combat when he had so little practice. Even Jean had trouble with it once in a while, and she'd been doing this for some years now. The simple fact is, Naruto needed more than just practice, he needed experience in order to elevate those abilities further. When it came down to it, there was not better practice than real combat. The outfit he had chosen was all black. While before he had gotten used to wearing his orange jumpsuit because he wanted the attention. It almost did not matter back in Konoha since stealth was not his strong suit. Here? Well, the fact that he needed to remain anonymous and protect his identity instead of flaunting meant he needed to be a little subtler in his choice of clothes. It was the best he had done with the small budget available. The first thing to go in was the black t-shirt, followed by a rough-looking, second-hand denim vest. To cover it all up was a long coat, also black. For the lower part of his outfit, he'd gone with combat-style black pants, rough yet flexible enough to allow movement. To cap it all off was the most expensive part of the entire ensemble, black combat boots. Naruto had floated around the idea of getting a few clones to work some odd jobs around Westchester and New York. He would definitely need the money if just buying this hastily put-together outfit cost that much. In order to protect his identity, he sewed a thin fabric that would cover his lower face. Looking at the mirror, it was very similar to Kakashi's face mask. Taking a deep breath, he shunshined out of the mansion and started to jump towards the city. He knew the road by now and with his advanced speed managed to reach it even farther than he expected. Now it was time to survey and find people in need. It started easy at first, knocking out a few muggers and crooks. For Naruto, they were as easy to take out as a normal civilian, even when they were armed. By comparison, non-shinobi thugs back at home seemed to have more experienced fighting than your average Earth hoodlum. It started to get harder when he started sneaking by the more equipped criminals. Most were armed with small weapons, 9mm pistols and .38 revolvers. In one instance, there was one that had a short shotgun. Come on, concentrate. He looked at 3 thugs, all armed, and focused his mind on all 3 guns at the same time. With strong pull, he managed to throw away the weapons to the sky. Before the drug dealers had time to react, Naruto jumped them and dealt with them swiftly. This is getting to be too easy, the shinobi murmured as he tied all 3 criminals to a lamppost and called the police from a payphone once again, like he'd been doing all night. Come on, Naruto whined, perched on top of a building as he surveyed the area with his Sharingan, trying to pick up unusual activity by monitoring their chakra. It was odd to find out that the humans on Earth actually had chakra, even if they couldn't mold it. They had very small reserves, too. Just like the civilians back at home who could not mold their meager reserves and had no ability to use ninjutsu. Finally, he concentrated on one area. It was a huge meeting of chakra. Naruto jumped over to the dark alleyway near the docks. Stealthily, he climbed to one of the warehouses to see what the meeting was about, as well as to get a better idea what he was dealing with. He counted 7 men, all of them armed with guns. One of them even had an assault rifle. They looked older than the average hoodlums he'd been dealing with all night, too. This must be the head of the local drug operation. Naruto thought about how to approach it without getting hit. He thought about using his mind to disarm the thugs again, but discarded it. He barely managed to do it with 3 and wasn't sure he'd be able to do the same with 7 at the same time. Looks like it's good old Kage Bunshin. With a smirk, he crossed his fingers. 20 poofs later, and there were now 21 identical Narutos all together and ready to swarm the enemies simultaneously before they had a chance to react. One small problem. Apparently, poofs are loud. What the hell was that? Yelled one of the thugs and immediately looked up to see what was on the rooftop. Even with his new, dark attire, the many Narutos stood out in the bright moonlight. The gunman immediately aimed and took a few shots. Even with the spray and pray aim, 2 clones poofed out of existence, leaving only thick smoke behind. Naruto saw the supposed leader, the one with the assault rifle, turn around to see the commotion and take aim directly at him. The others did the same as soon as they heard the loud cracks of the guns. He immediately jumped out of the danger zone and ordered the rest of the clones to separate. The Jinchuriki immediately jumped at the first thug, seeing that the gun was now empty. One overhead kick later and the thug was down with a broken jaw. He heard 2 more clones get destroyed before he sneaked behind the next opponent. A blow behind the head and he dropped to the ground as well. The dispelling of the clones had an effect not even Naruto had thought of before. The thick smoke was slow to dissipate, and the battlefield lost much visibility, much to the drug dealer's disadvantage. It'd be a disadvantage to him too if it wasn't for the Sharingan, but even with the non-matured eyes, the chakra signatures were clear as a white on black. What the fuck are these guys? Yelled one of the remaining gunmen. They just turned to smoke. Just keep shooting. Naruto smirked again. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. More clones soon joined the fray, and after so many shots the docks were completely covered in smoke. He could see the men puffing, trying to see the best they could in the immense fog they had unwittingly created. They were easy pickings. He delivered a punch to the first, right in the nose and hard enough to make the hoodlum drop lifelessly on the ground immediately. The second was very close, a kick to the back of the head and he was out. 3 left. The next one was crouched down in a corner, nervously pointing his gun everywhere and trying his best to breathe normally. Naruto grabbed a pipe and decked him right in the temple. 2. Unfortunately, the 2 that were left were apparently the better trained of the lot. They took positions back to back and one of them had an assault rifle, compensating by trying to increase their visual range with 2 pairs of eyes. They'd never gone against a shinobi though. They had one blind spot. Naruto jumped in the air and dropped down on the 2. The back of his boots hit their temple and both dropped bonelessly on the wet concrete, their weapons falling from their hands. The shinobi took a deep breath and surveyed the area, turning off his eyes and quickly trying to find something to bind the thugs effectively enough. He found some heavy-duty chains used for bigger boats and started to collect the bodies when he heard deafeningly loud clicking sound at his back. Naruto instinctively let go of the chains and dove just in time to avoid a bullet that would have perforated his head. He was hidden behind a container but felt the vibrations of projectiles as the remaining thug emptied his clip. "You fucking freak! Show yourself!" The blonde was about to do just that once he heard the telltale clicking of the empty gun when the taunts were replaced by grunts and some mysterious, sticky sound. "Oh, even I felt that one," snarked a mysterious voice. "Blondie really did a number on you, fellas. Boy, I would not want to be you." Naruto stepped from the other side of the container in order to see another costumed man. This one wore what seemed to be a slightly more elaborate one with a red and blue hoodie. The figure even had a full-face mask that hid his identity. On his chest was the symbol of a black spider. "Hey, the blondie shows himself." The red and blue-clad figure kicked the chains Naruto had dropped. "The old chains and lamppost? PSHH. Amateur." From his wrists, some sort of rope started to spew out until it covered the thugs, pinning them to the ground. "Who are you?" asked Naruto, turning his eyes red again. "You mean you don't know about me? That hurts. I'm the one and only, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, don't forget the hyphen." "Who are you, unknown multiplying man?" Naruto thought about it for a moment. It couldn't be the Shadow, Jin, Ororo, and Logan would pick that right up after he told them of the Kage. He didn't want a Japanese name either, that would be dead giveaway. He finally came up with a name. "Hello, are you mute?" cajoled Spider-Man. "Oh, sorry. Politically correct, orally impaired?" "No. That sounded dirty." Naruto sighed. "Call me Maelstrom." Chapter 6, Pretty Kitty, Ruto. Naruto groaned on his pillow, every single sense in a sleepy haze, not really knowing if he was asleep or awake. Too exhausted to even realize what was going on, he kept his eyes closed, hoping that his dreams would take him away again while his body rested from beating dozens of miscreants the previous night. "Naruto, what was it?" grumbled the blonde, finally opening his eyes to see a slightly exasperated-looking Jean Grey standing beside his bed. "How long have you been sleeping?" "It's past noon," exclaimed the redhead. "It's Sunday, Jean-chan," whined Naruto, now looking at the older telepath. She looked as pretty as she always was, even now that she was clearly frustrated. Jean huffed before going over to the curtains and quickly opened them, letting in the bright rays of sunlight. The sight made Naruto wince, eyes burning even when he closed them. "Jean-chan," he complained, "you already missed breakfast. We're about to have lunch, and I don't want the food we made for you go to waste again. You already eat 5 times what we all eat." Naruto felt a little guilty. He knew the extent that everyone would go through to feed his more expanded appetite. Besides, the mention of lunch made him wake up fully. "All right, Jean-chan. Just give me a moment to change." Jean smiled and nodded before she left the room, and as soon as Naruto heard the door closing, he went over to the closet and started to rummage for something to wear, but not without first cursing silently at the fact that they had left his nightly outfit so in the open and promptly hiding it in the back. He'd have to find a better solution to keep it from prying eyes. As changed from his sleepwear, he started to think back at why exactly he was waking up so late. The previous night. "You really should make a better effort of hiding your identity," recommended Spider-Man. He had pulled the lower part of his face mask to make room for the large sandwich he was devouring with gusto. You won't be hiding your identity too long with blonde hair and blue eyes, this isn't Scandinavia. Naruto made a muffled grunt, too busy cramming his own sandwich below the face mask and into his mouth. Even if it made the guy look a little ridiculous, it made sense why Spider-Man would use the hoodie and completely cover his face. The goggles also made sure the eye color wasn't noticed by any onlooker. The only way anyone would recognize the red and blue-clad figure is by his voice. Given the height and tone, Naruto was pretty sure that Spider-Man was just around his age. You must be a great authority as to where they buy discount hoodies and opaque goggles then, Spider Kid? Asked Naruto. Spider-Man. You sound like you're 15. So do you. You talk about maintaining your secret identity and yet you don't shut up. Naruto pointed an accusatory finger at Spider-Man. Look at the pot calling the kettle black. Spider-Man pointed back. They both stood up looking at each other for a few seconds before Naruto broke the silence. You're taking the east sector this time. What? I took it last time. Then you should be more familiar with it, Spider Kid. Naruto mocked. I thought we agreed we'd split this evenly, ninja dude. Spider-Man retorted. It's not like it matters. It's been a week since we started this and crime seems to have gone down, Naruto pointed out. Why do we only patrol Queens again? This is only a small part of the city, the safest part of it in fact. Spider-Man sighed. You don't know how this works, do you? We're not the only costumed, powered-up weirdos running around beating miscreants. Bronx is covered by someone else, Hell's Kitchen is done by another, and so on and so forth. We can't go over to the other areas? What kind of stupid rule is that? Questioned Naruto, turning on his Sharingan and doing his best to see the area below the 30-story building both he and Spider-Man were perched on. You wanna go over to Hell's Kitchen? Responded Spider-Man. Go ahead then, I'm already losing a lot of sleep as it is. I have school, you know. Why do this then? Asked Naruto. For once, Spider-Man seemed to get visibly tense. Naruto had really only seen those reactions when the red and blue-clad crime fighter was in action. The anonymous team took a deep breath inside before looking at his hands and slowly made fists. I didn't always do this stuff, revealed Spider-Man. I was pretty selfish when I first got my powers, then something happened, and I learned a valuable lesson. With great power comes great responsibility. Naruto nodded. He did not know what happened for Spider-Man to learn such a lesson, but his experience told him it was related to death. The blonde had never forgotten the words Haku said before the ice user had sacrificed himself. Nor had he forgotten Zabuza's conviction, or the old man's. What about you? Asked Spider-Man, interrupting Naruto's thoughts. Why are you fighting? Because it's the right thing to do, answered Naruto. Really? That's it? No tragic backstory? Not even a bad guy stealing your sweet roll when you were a kid and mourning that loss every single day? Let's just say I'm a really good guy, responded Naruto before giving one of Kakashi's patented eye smiles and a thumbs up. Anyways, getting anything on the police station? Spider-Man picked up the radio and started to browse through it but found nothing. It was strange, seeing such little activity in a city that seemed to almost always be buzzing with activity, criminal or otherwise, but he'd apparently been told of the reasons for the recent ramp-up in police activity. The government has been in constant vigilance since the towers got knocked out last year, Spider-Man had told him. Even when it was done by foreign terrorists, the police seem adamant to appear tougher on crime. Politicians never let a tragedy go to waste. Wouldn't that make our job easier? Oh, hell no. They only really got rid of the small-time hoods peddling homegrown drugs and those doing petty theft, but the big guys are more established than ever, so the little crime we're getting more than makes up for it in severity. In my hometown, corruption is punished with imprisonment or death, responded Naruto. The Hokage was very adamant about treating those that commit treason against the village. Sasuke was the only exception he knew of. Harsh, ninja dude. Spider-Man continued to tinker with the radio but it started to go to public broadcasts. He was about to change it back but a special announcement made him stop. Breaking news! Said the radio jockey. Associated Press just announced that the one and only Tony Stark, previously thought dead following an ambush after a presentation in Afghanistan, has just been found, apparently healthy and whole. I'm sure there's a few ladies out there that'll be interested in the latter, he joked. Mr. Stark is expected to give a press release tomorrow about the future of Stark Industries. No further comment was made. Oh, hell yeah! Exclaimed Spider-Man. That's awesome news. Nothing beats Stark products. Even their old tech is better than what most companies attempt today. Naruto did not comment. Truthfully, he was still trying to learn about all the technology this place had to offer. He really could not differentiate between old or new tech quite so easily as of now. Though, if somebody who knew his tech stuff like Spider-Man told him that Stark was the best, then it probably was. I wonder what he's going to announce, mused Spider-Man, seemingly forgetting that he was supposed to be searching for. I really wish he'd develop more stuff for the civilian market, but, he sighed, I guess the military is where the big bucks are. The military is there to keep the people safe. It makes sense why they'd get the most money, said Naruto. Most of the village funds were given to the shinobi force back in Konoha after they completed missions. It was an understood agreement that civilians would pay their taxes to keep their safety. Spider-Man chuckled. Who would have guessed that a masked vigilante that operates outside the law would be so much in favor of authority? I'm only masked to protect my identity, defended Naruto. Truthfully, he was pretty uncomfortable in not showing his face. Showing off was part of the whole fighter appeal, but it was more important to maintain secrets right now. Doing a bang-up job at that, ninja dude. I told you, my codename is Maelstrom. Get it right, Spider Kid. Spider-Man. Naruto grumbled but looked at his watch quickly to realize that it was getting pretty darn late. No reports, then. One last sweep across Queens and then I'm heading back home. I live outside the city. Buzz. Nope. Don't say any more, ninja dude, yelled Spider-Man. Don't say anything that might reveal your location. Better to have your everyone think you live inside the city. He stood silent for a moment but Naruto could almost have seen the eyes widen behind the goggles. Wait. Outside the city? You mean you've been coming all these nights from upstate? How the hell do you do that during rush hour? Naruto finished eating the last of the sandwich before standing up and leaning over the edge of the tall building. I'm awesome, he said, mustering about as much coolness as he could into the phrase before jumping off the precipice. Next time, you take the east side. Came the indignant voice of Spider-Man. Present, Naruto grumbled as he remembered yesterday. It wouldn't be such a pain to go out on his little nightly escapades if the damn city wasn't an hour away at his highest speed. Add another hour to return and the fact that he had to use chakra on top of the action and the end result was a very tired Jinchuriki. I can't go out every night like Spider-Man does and keep up with my studies at the same time. I also need to make sure the others are not suspecting anything. He was already failing the latter if Jean's questions were any indication. It got even worse when he went down to eat. You skipped breakfast, the professor stated plainly. Are you feeling well? There was a hint of something in his voice. As earnest as he tried to be, Naruto always thought that Professor Xavier always knew more than he let on. I'm alright. Just very tired, studying for the midterms is hard. Besides him, Kurt nodded in agreement and Scott shrugged and continued to eat. Everyone else looked unconvinced, especially Logan. It is good that you are taking your studies seriously, and far be it for me to tell you what you can and cannot do during your free time. I just hope you take care to not harm yourself, said the professor. Naruto grinned before picking up food from the table center. As always, his portions dwarfed those around him. The others seemed to have taken the theory that his alien body consumed a lot more calories than human ones. He didn't have the courage to tell them that even back in Konoha his food consumption rivaled even those of the Akimichi clan. Next semester is starting after the exams, Jean said specifically to him. Have you considered the extracurricular activities? I don't know if that's a good idea, Jean-chan. I have an advantage physically and I don't want to hurt anyone, said Naruto. Okay, maybe Duncan is fair game. Who said anything about sports? Asked Jean with a smirk. I mean I joined one for fitness, but you have that covered. Think of something that will help you improve. There's a science club, math club, arts. You could even join student council. Many colleges are looking for leaders. Naruto thought about it long and hard as they ate. It wasn't until he was almost finished with his meal that realization hit. He was thinking of it like he was in here for the long term. The notion of returning home was completely forgotten, quite unlike the way it had dominated him the previous months. "Hey! Put on the news!" Kurt suddenly piped in, signaling towards the television. "Tony Stark is about to give his press conference." Logan grunted but conceded to the request. "I can't quite believe a pampered rich boy managed to escape the Taliban all by himself." Any further discussion was silenced as the TV showed a slightly scarred dark-haired man eating a cheeseburger. It seemed kind of unprofessional compared to some of the other people Naruto had seen in television, but from what he'd heard of Tony Stark, it was pretty natural. The ambience became even more carefree when the multi-billionaire sat down below the podium. "You know," said Tony Stark, still chewing on the burger, "I never got to say goodbye to my father. Thinking back on it now, there's questions I would have asked him. I would have asked him how he felt about what his company did, if he was conflicted, if he ever had doubts. Or maybe he was every inch of a man we all remember from the old newsreels." Naruto did not expect such sobering attitude from the man who had been characterized America's foremost playboy by everyone he knew. Tony Stark's eyes were plagued by the same look he saw on Team 7's face after their mission in Wave. "I saw young Americans killed," continued Stark. "Killed by the very weapons I created to defend them and protect them, and I saw that I had become part of a system that is comfortable with zero accountability." Everyone at the table was silent. Ororo, who had never missed the opportunity to speak negatively about Stark's weapons, hardened her jaw. Logan's gaze was even more intense than it usually was, and the excited smile on Kurt's face had vanished, replaced by stone-cold seriousness. "What happened over there?" asked one of the journalists. "I had my eyes opened," Stark said, a little more upbeat as he stood up and walked to the podium. "I realized I had more to offer this world than just making things blow up." He took a deep breath and looked directly at the cameras. "And that's why, effective immediately, I'm shutting down the weapons manufacturing division of Stark International." Tony Stark was interrupted by a flurry of questions thrown by all the reporters, but he ignored them, completing his statement with, "Until such a time as I can decide what the future of this company will be, what direction it should take, the one I'm comfortable with, and is consistent with the highest good of this country and the world." The screen turned back to the news anchors who were now discussing the shocking announcement amongst themselves, but their comments were quickly ignored by everyone. "God damn!" exclaimed Scott. "He's getting rid of the weapons? That's their biggest market. It's money paid with blood," stated Ororo. Naruto could see that she could barely hide her pearly white smile contained. "I think I may give up my Stark boycott now that I don't have to feel guilty about giving him money." Naruto did not really understand much of the fuss around weaponry. The better one's nation military was, the better it would be to defend them, right? At least that's the way it would be in Konoha. They invested a lot on the R&D weapons divisions. It seemed to strike hard against Ororo, though, so he kept his mouth shut. "I think I will try to go for all of them," he told Jean later that day. "Ha! All of them?" "Science club, physics, music, and art, all of them," clarified Naruto. "That's way too much, Naruto. You only have a limited amount that you can do with free time, and we have to keep up with the training, remember?" responded Jean. "Why so interested in everything all of the sudden?" "I've been seeing all these months," started Naruto, looking into Jean's eyes. "Back home you only needed to think about one career path with some fundamental skills. That's not at all in here." He bit his lip. "Tony Stark, Reed Richards, all these great people have so many skills, and it seems the more of them you have the better you are in the end." "It still doesn't mean you have enough time." Naruto chuckled. "You underestimate me, Jean-chan," he said before summoning around 10 clones. "I can learn much faster with these." "All right then," responded Jean. Naruto nodded. "Now I need to go and train with the Xavier-sensei. It's starting to get a lot harder to control all this stuff." "It's alright, Naruto. You're starting to get to the point where it'll become complicated. Feel free to ask me any tips, as always," responded Jean with a sympathetic smile. "Telekinesis training tomorrow?" "You bet." Wasting no time, Naruto used Shunshin to transport himself right outside the professor's office. Before he had a chance to knock on the door, he could hear a voice piercing into his mind. "Come in." Naruto opened the door and saw the professor sitting in front of what looked like a small, yet very complex maze. The professor gave him a nod and signaled towards the opposite end of the table where the puzzle was located. "Good afternoon," transmitted the professor. "The last few sessions have been going well. For now, I would ask that we communicate with our minds, it'll make it easier for you to get used to given your growth. Gotcha, responded Naruto. Talking mentally was not as much trouble now, especially compared to the non-psychic members of the team. They still needed to concentrate a hell of a lot more than him and Jean. Plus, they were not actually able to initiate it. What are we doing today? Well, I thought since you're already used to mental links in terms of communicating words, we'd practice with something a little more concrete, images, in other words. The professor put his palm over his temple. Naruto closed his eyes and an image that was so familiar yet so different came to him. It took him a while to realize that it was the institute, yet aside from the basic structure, most of it was different, like it was a picture from the past. That was the mansion 15 years ago, before I started remodeling it. Before Logan, Aurora, Scott, Jean, and even you came to live here. It's a picture from the past, recalled from my memories, explained the professor. Weird, but okay, responded Naruto. So, you can share memories like this? Yes, or you can share what you are seeing. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now I want you to try and do a little exercise for me. Show me something. Naruto got a little frantic, getting very personal about his memories, especially considering the fact that he had not revealed to anyone that he had a giant chakra monster sealed inside him. It doesn't have to be very personal, assured the professor. He tried to think about the most significant one after he had arrived here and unwittingly ended up sending the one in which Aurora had hugged him after his birthday. Interesting. It's nice to know that you're developing deep friendships with the others here. Naruto could almost swear there was a hint of mirth in the professor's tone but kept quiet about it. That's good, but I wish to know if I can push you a little bit further today? I feel we're beginning to truly scratch your potential now. Naruto nodded enthusiastically. Every bit of training was important to communicate with the old man with the ringed eyes. Hell yeah! The professor rummaged below the table and grabbed a cage. Inside, there was a small white gerbil. This is an exercise I taught to Jean when she first came here. The maze before you might not be that much difficult to our advanced cognitive abilities, along with the fact that we can see it from above, explained the professor as he set the rodent inside the maze. But our little friend here will take quite a while to get out. With your guidance, he might have a better chance. During the next 2 hours, Naruto tried his best to send the mental images to the rodent, eventually guiding it with difficulty through the right turns until it managed to get to the end. It was a lot harder than he thought it'd be, and he was pretty tired near the end. Excellent work, praised the professor, switching back to speaking verbally. I must admit that I did not think you were going to be able to complete it in your first session. Your powers are certainly growing, it confirms my assumptions about you. Assumptions? What assumptions? Asked Naruto while sitting down on the chair. He never thought 2 hours of mental labor would leave him in a state similar to the kunai and tree training. About your potential. With the correct training you may be a candidate for the Omega level classification. Omega? Classifications? What do you mean? The professor seemed to get out of his trance. Do forgive me. I have not explained the classifications to you. He cleared his voice. You might have figured out by now that not all mutants are the same. Like all human evolution, the changes vary, and that means that sometimes you will get very different results. Thus, I decided to create a classification for the many types. Let's start with the betas. These are mutants that cannot keep their gifts in check, but are otherwise able to pass off as normal Homo sapiens. Think about Scott and how he needs to maintain his eyes in those ruby quartz glasses. There's also Logan with his powers that have changed his appearance slightly. There's the Alpha classification. These are mutants that are almost indistinguishable from humans. You, Aurora, and Jean fit this bill. Not to mention that your powers are very useful in combat situations. But don't I have a different body than you guys? Asked Naruto. What about my birthmarks? Those are not related to mutation, as far as I'm aware. As for your body, it is quite normal compared to the rest of your kind, is it not? We have the same organs, tissues, muscles, and so forth, correct? Logan, well, it is not my place to discuss about what happened to him. Alright, so what's next? Gamma class. Their powers are handy, but as a result of their mutation, these cannot pass as humans. Think of Kurt. The only reason he's able to pass off as human is due to that device that Reed Richards was gracious enough to build for him. There's the Delta class, who are very hard to come across by since their powers are subtle compared to the rest. Most of them don't even know that they're mutants, but their gifts can be quite useful, such as extreme heightened intelligence as an example. Until now, I have only met one Delta-class mutant. He went by the name of Forge, a genius in machinery. Epsilons are a special case. Like Gamma-class mutants, they cannot hide their mutation, but they do not have powers aside from physical evidence that they are not humans. That would really suck. No powers and being an outcast? Naruto remembered what Irika had said once, as bad as you think your situation may be, there are others that would love to be in your shoes. Finally, there are the mutants that fit into Omega class. The professor took a deep breath. These are the most powerful of us all. So powerful that they are even capable of ending all life on our planet. Naruto's eyes widened, and dared to ask a question. Are you Omega class, sensei? The professor nodded slowly. Yes. Despite my physical limitation, my mind is able to end more life than the most powerful nuclear weapon. You see why it's imperative that you and Jean are trained to the utmost of your ability, and the importance that you use your powers responsibly? Naruto nodded. We're lucky that you're the only Omega level, then. Shaking his head, the professor started to move his chair back to the main desk. No, there's another. You met him the day you arrived. Magneto. Oh yeah, the metal controlling dude. That's his name? The professor nodded. Jean, Scott, and Kurt do not yet know of his existence, but I'm sure Magneto will try and recruit all of you sooner or later. He already did it with you that day. I'm not joining him, said Naruto. Don't feel like being an outlaw, besides, there's no Jean or Araro on his team. Chuckling, the professor grabbed a few papers from his desk. Go and rest. We have done a lot progress today. Naruto nodded and went back to his room, nearly collapsing from the exertion. Crime fighting, sleepless nights, and villains with corny names. Well, at least there was no Akatsuki going after him now, so that's a plus. Naruto watched in satisfaction as his clones finished picking out all of the dry leaves from the mansion driveway. It was clearly autumn, sweater weather according to Jean, and every day it seemed as though the roads were inundated with more and more fallen leaves from the trees. Logan grunted from Naruto's side as he looked on at the clear pavement, a cold beer in his hand. Those clones of yours are actually useful for something aside from annoying the hell out of me, brat. They're a lot more useful than you think, Claus. Logan grunted, taking a long swig of his alcoholic drink. Chuck has asked to see you, brat. He's waiting for you in his office. More training? Asked Naruto. No. You'll see when you get there. Naruto was a little annoyed at the non-answer but still dispelled all his clones and went back inside the manor. Kurt had gone to town, apparently to stuff his face again on one of those burger bombs he'd gotten addicted to. Scott had gone out even earlier outside Bayville County and into North Salem proper in order to finalize his driver's test. He'd been pretty ecstatic about it, to the point of already buying a car. The lack of the two other male mutants meant that the only students left in the mansion were Jean and Ororo, the latter of which was calmly reading a book while sitting on a chair near the entrance. Ororo? She gazed from her text and gave a quick smile. The professor is waiting for you. He's going to give you an assignment. An assignment? Naruto couldn't help but be excited at the idea, much like he had been during the missions of Team 7. A little more excited now, he hurried over to Professor Xavier's office and before he knocked the door, he remembered the instructions. I am here, sensei. You may enter, came the professor's voice, and Naruto did just that. The leader of the X-Men was seated behind his desk as usual, on one of the seats was Jean Grey. Both of them looked like they'd been expecting him. Ah, Naruto. You're finally here, said the professor before nodding to the seat besides Jean. Please, have a seat. What's this about? Asked Naruto. Are we finally going out there for a real mission? Beat up some weirdos? Naruto reprimanded Jean. Not quite, responded Professor Xavier. I do not wish for any physical violence unless it is strictly necessary. Jean nodded sagely at this. Then, what is it? I'm not much use except for fighting, said Naruto. We found a new, young mutant, the professor revealed before a screen at his left flashed with the available information. We identified the location in Deerfield, Illinois, a small town near Chicago. She's female, around your age, Naruto. Good. chirped Jean. We need more of that female touch around here. Ororo and I are already having so much trouble keeping all of the others in line. Naruto was simply interested in the fact that there would hopefully be another person to join them. He wondered what kind of power this new mutant would have. Would it be some teleportation abilities like Kurt? Maybe some telekinetic powers just like him and Jean? Hell, maybe they could get another telepath. I want both of you to come with me to help recruit her, declared Professor Xavier. Jean gave the professor an odd look. Why me, Professor? You're the best student I have, Jean. The best example we could show to this new mutant's parents about what our institute has to offer. Naruto raised his hand. What about me, then? You're a good student, too. I've come to realize that you have a certain way with people, stated the professor. Naruto crossed his arms. That's it? I think you'd make a better impression than all of the male students. Kurt is too careless at times. Scott is driven, too driven and eager to use his powers. Logan is. Logan. Justified the professor. Besides, there's another signal we caught up in the same town. A male. I agree with the professor. I'd prefer it if I went with you, said Jean. Very well, announced the professor. Get ready and meet me in the Blackbird in 30 minutes. All right. Exclaimed Naruto before doing a tiger seal and disappearing, leaving behind only a poof of smoke. He reappeared inside his room and immediately started to prepare. The first thing he put on was civilian garb. The new recruits' parents would probably not take well to their training gear, but he still took it anyways. It's best to always be prepared for any situation. Once he was done, Naruto made another tiger seal and made a quick stop to the kitchen to steal one of the giant sandwiches before going down to the hangar. The professor was already there, but Jean was still missing. Naruto, please help me inside. I think it's time for you to start learning a little about flying the Blackbird, said Professor Xavier, his wheelchair already going up the ramp and into the plane. Yes. Naruto exclaimed giddily. Flying the Blackbird was something that he wanted to learn, but Logan guarded it like a dragon most of the time, scared that one of them might wreck it. Whoever had designed the high-tech jet seemed to have known that some young people might pilot it, or at least there would be difficulty controlling it for the inexperienced. Similar to a tricycle, the Blackbird had a training phase that gave less control to the driver while he or she got used to the operating it. You will not fly this today, declared the professor. We are currently programming simulations in the danger room first. I will tell Logan to teach all students how to use it in case of an emergency. Naruto was about to respond, but footsteps interrupted him. He looked behind to see Jean Grey in casual clothing, suitable for autumn weather. Illinois was not any warmer than New York this time of year. I will pilot, said Professor Xavier. In the meantime, it's best if the two of you come up with a good strategy to approach this new young mutant. Remember when we introduced ourselves to you, Naruto, empathy and tact is key. Jean looked at Naruto teasingly. That means not running off your mouth. Naruto pouted. I'm not that bad, Jean-chan. He thought that he'd gotten a lot better in terms of tact, but every once in a while, either Logan or Scott would kick him under the table. Just act natural, okay? Said Jean, in an amused tone. I'd hate to miss on the chance to have another girl around. I'd never disappoint you, Jean-chan, said Naruto earnestly. It would be interesting to have another person alongside the rest of his new friends, and if Jean was happier, then he would be happy as well. Jean nodded, pleased. Well, I'm not a fan of skipping school, especially with midterms coming up, but I guess a change in scenery will do nicely. To his own surprise, Naruto agreed. If he'd been told just a year back that he'd be annoyed to miss class, he would have laughed before pranking them. The fact is that the uses of the classes were a lot more evident here than back home with all the advanced technology. Having clones around to help you learn what would take others a lot more time certainly didn't harm. We're almost there, called the professor from the intercom. We'll be stopping by the female mutant's house first. Records identify her as Catherine Pride, 15 years old. What about the other one? Asked Naruto. Lance Albers, orphan and with an extensive record of juvenile delinquency. Professor? Are you sure you want to invite someone with that kind of history to the school? Asked Jean. Everyone deserves an opportunity. The institute opens its doors to every mutant that is in need of help and willing to change himself for the better, responded Professor Xavier. However, we cannot force people to come with us. He has to make that decision himself. Naruto did not know how to feel about that. He did remember back in Konoha how he did his pranks, but those were just meant to be harmless fun and people were never in any danger. He knew when to stop before he took it too far. It would depend on how much damage a certain person was willing to do for him to determine if they deserved the chance. As soon as the blackbird landed on a large patch of land, Naruto and Jean walked out with Professor Xavier to gaze upon traditional American suburbs. Wordlessly, they started to make their way towards a particular house and knocked on it. A middle-aged woman opened the door. Naruto only gave her a quick glance to realize that despite the veneer of normalcy, her appearance was a little ragged, hair slightly unkempt, dark circles under her eyes, and general tension on her composure. "Good afternoon," greeted the professor, his tone diplomatic. "Is this by any chance the Pride residence, honey?" called the woman, and a man joined her promptly. He looked just as ragged as his wife. "Charles?" asked the man, whom Naruto assumed was Mr. Pride. "Charles? Is that you? I haven't seen you since Vietnam. You know him, Professor?" asked Jean, her voice sounding surprised. Even if still composed, Naruto could tell that the professor was surprised as well. "Carmen," nodded Professor Xavier. "It has been a long time. I regret not reaching out to you in all these years. Come in," welcomed Mr. Pride, letting them into his living room. "I think I offered many times before for you to meet my wife, Teresa." The professor shook both their hands whilst Naruto and Jean sat down on a two-seat sofa. "Charmed to finally meet you. Thank you for your hospitality. Teresa, something to drink for our guests, please," said Mr. Pride before slumping down on a couch, like he hadn't slept all night and the exhaustion was catching up to him. "I admit, Charles, this is not the best of times for us." "I know, my friend," said the professor. "I guess I must also admit that I'm not here to catch up with old friendships. It is in fact quite a coincidence that I knocked on your door." "What do you mean?" asked Mr. Pride, his voice a little more nervous now, calming down only slightly when Mrs. Pride came back with tea. "Well," began the professor before taking a large breath. "I am here specifically to speak about your daughter." "What about Kitty?" snapped Mrs. Pride, probably a little more impolitely than she intended. "Kitty is fine. She's just fine." "Oh, I assure you that young Catherine is a healthy young woman, but she is a little more special than others," answered the professor. "Jean and Naruto here are also special, and you will hardly find any two upstanding individuals like them." Mrs. Pride closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I'm sorry, it's been hard." Professor Xavier nodded. "I understand. May I ask if there has been anything out of the ordinary?" Mr. Pride cleared his voice a little as if trying to find the correct words. "It happened a couple of nights ago. Kitty had fallen asleep late, studying for midterms. I was fast asleep when I was awoken by Kitty's scream. I rushed towards the noise, but it had not originated from her room, it came from the basement. Somehow, she had just fallen from her bed to the basement." "I understand," said the professor. "No. You don't," exclaimed Mrs. Pride. I just cannot explain. We've been keeping it hidden because we are afraid the government will take her away. Somebody else came yesterday, a young blonde woman, saying that Kitty was special and was offering to enroll her at a private school in Massachusetts. I screamed at her to leave us alone." Now Naruto was surprised. Looking at his side, he saw the professor's eyes widen a little. "There's another school?" he asked telepathically. "Not to my knowledge," answered the professor before saying, "I am sorry you've been through such an experience, but I assure you that your daughter is safe from the government. My institute has the right arrangements with state agencies." "Institute?" asked Mr. Pride. "Institute for what?" "For gifted people," responded the professor before nodding towards Naruto and Jean. The red-headed psychic nodded back before placing her palm against her temple and telekinetically holding the kettle and pouring everyone a cup of tea. Naruto complimented her by wheeling the plate of pastries around the table, offering them to everyone. Only the professor grabbed one, the married couple too shocked to respond. "Young Catherine has very similar gifts. It is nothing to be ashamed of, but it can be dangerous for people like Naruto, Jean, myself, and your daughter to go without guidance about our powers," said the professor. Mr. Pride shook away the surprise. How? How did this happen to Kitty? What about you, Charles? Were you always like this? I regret hiding it from you, old friend. The same fears that plague you once plagued me, and still do, which is why I have created a place where gifted people can come to train their powers and adapt to the world around them, said Professor Xavier. I understand, but why? Truth be told, I do not know all the details, responded the professor. I do believe mutants like us have existed for a long time, but there has been a monumental increase. My theory is that human technology has been a significant factor. Radiation and chemicals have ramped up human development and given birth to more mutants. Back in Vietnam. Agent Orange? Asked Mr. Pride, voice filled with regret. It could be factor, but it matters little. What matters is that right now Catherine is confused and scared, and that could be a danger to those around her and herself. I would like to cordially invite her to Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Absolutely not, cried Mrs. Pride. Kitty belongs here, with her family. She has her whole life here, she. Please, Mrs. Pride, interrupted Jean, her voice carrying a tone of comprehension. I understand that this must be hard. It was hard for me at first to go away from my family too, but if I did not have the tools that the professor taught me, I could have been a serious danger to those I hold dear. But, tried to protest Mrs. Pride. She's my baby, she whimpered. I think, interjected the professor, that we cannot have this conversation without your daughter here. It's her decision in the end. Mr. Pride nodded. She is at school. Kitty will be the one to decide what she wants to do. It's around 4 blocks that way, he said, pointing outside the window. We can walk there. Of course. Jean, Naruto, nodded the professor. Naruto nodded back before putting his hand around Jean, and with the other doing a half tiger seal, they reappeared near the entrance of the school. Ugh! I don't know how you and Kurt can go around doing this all day, said Jean, shuddering a bit. Naruto gave an insulted look. Hey! I'm not as bad as Kurt, and mine don't smell of sulfur. You're slower, though, responded Jean with a smirk. For now. Whatever, let's just go on a look for Kitty. Did you see her picture on the table? Asked Jean while her eyes scanned around the school grounds. Of course, I did. I'm a shinobi. Responded Naruto. Good, I'll go on this side, you go on that one. Remember, Naruto. Tact, said Jean while going to the left, where the soccer field and a smaller building were situated. Also, be on the lookout for the other one. Yeah, grumbled Naruto before walking towards the main building. Most of the students paid him little attention, most of them looking like they were more preoccupied with going to class than seeing a new face. Putting both hands behind his head, the blonde lazily tried to locate the new mutant, but he was interrupted by 2 girls who, judging by their clothes, were on their way to a PE class. Hey handsome! Naruto had to admit that it made him blush a little. Handsome had never really been a word that was thrown his way. Idiot, dropout, or failure were the ways he'd been described back home. Either way, he maintained his composure and kept his mind towards the objective. Hello. I was actually looking for some help, said Naruto. Ah. Feeling lost? Said the blonde girl. In terms of attractiveness, Jean, Ororo, and Sue blew them out of the water. But Naruto was completely inexperienced with women being so openly flirtatious. Even he was aware of what was happening. Heir, mumbled Naruto, trying to keep his cool. I'm looking for a student here, Catherine Pride. You know her? The flirtatious smile on both girls disappeared at that moment, and so did the charm. Kitty? Klutzy Kitty? What would you want with dweeb like her? Any interest Naruto might have had evaporated then and there. None of your business, he responded in a much colder tone. Just tell me, the brunette snorted. Whatever. I'm sure she's gotten herself locked up somewhere, she said bitingly before tugging on the blonde's shoulder and leaving the hall. Naruto grunted but kept on walking through the now empty corridors, trying in vain to find another soul that would be more cooperative in his quest to find the mutant commonly known as Kitty until, without warning, he felt what seemed to be trembles on the floor, like a minor earthquake was about to occur. That's weird, thought Naruto, but kept on going through the empty school until he started to hear loud murmurs emanating from around the hallway. I told you, we can do it, said a male voice. We need to find her, she's the key to getting those test answers. Out from the corner came 3 students. It was clear that the tall, brown-haired one was the leader, the other 2 screamed followers. Naruto barely paid attention to their appearance, he was far more interested in what they were talking about. Pride? Asked one of the stooges. She's straighter than an arrow. There's no way she'll help us, Lance. Lance, thought Naruto. He's the other one. Hey! What are you doing here? Questioned Lance, distracting him. I haven't seen your mud before here, Blondie. Naruto grunted but maintained his composure. I'm looking for Kitty Pryde, and for you, he answered honestly. Got an offer for both of you. Shove it! Responded Lance while stepping up to him threateningly. And keep away from Kitty as well. I saw her first, pal. So, I take it you're not interested? Asked Naruto nonchalantly. Fine. The professor said that everyone deserved a chance, but if this asshat wasn't willing to take it, then Naruto wasn't going to attempt to persuade him. There's no way he wanted someone like that on the mansion. Sighing, he walked past the fuming delinquent and continued on like the encounter hadn't taken place, but as soon as they were out of sight, he made a clone and ordered it to follow Lance Alvars. After a few minutes of non-success, he concentrated on locating Jean. Jean-chan? I found Delinquent-san. He isn't interested, he communicated. Did you even try, Naruto? Answered Jean before sighing. Whatever, just come to the drama class building, I found her, she said. And Naruto? Between the 2 of us, I also saw Alvars. I don't blame you for not trying. Ah. I knew you were on my team, Jean-chan. On my way. Naruto sped up towards Jean's direction, finding the nearest exit and easily locating the small room his fellow telepath had mentioned. Before he managed to open the door, it swung open and a slim figure slammed into him. Oof! Gasped Naruto, but it was not enough to send him to the ground. Instinctively, he grabbed onto what had collided with him. Ugh, did I just hit a brick wall? Complained the figure. Naruto looked down and saw that it was a girl with brunette hair and hazel eyes. Her tresses were made up in a ponytail and she was wearing a uniform fit for a PE class. She was pretty. Very pretty, just like Jean and Storm but shorter in stature. From the pictures he saw before, Naruto knew that this was Kitty Pryde. Not a brick wall. Just me, answered Naruto, barely aware that he was still holding onto her. Heir, hi. Said Kitty, her face turning slightly pink. This is like, so awkward. Naruto didn't even need to read her mind to know that she was still confused and scared, so he tried to do his best to not make her uncomfortable. Wanna take a seat? How about we go away from here for a moment? Yeah, that'd be great, Kitty sighed exhaustedly. I need to get away from here. I know that feeling. Name's Naruto, by the way, responded Naruto while trying his best to lead her away from the building. It would not be good for anyone else to startle her right now. Kitty Pryde, she responded. Naruto already knew that, but it was best to break this slowly. Be tactful. Jean had said. He eventually found some tables near a school kiosk and led Kitty to a seat. You want something to drink? I'm alright, said Kitty. I just need to breathe a little. I've had a very long day, you know? Naruto nodded. Some days are hard, but what's important is that you take stock of the situation and decide how you're going to confront it. It's like, your entire world, everything you know, is just turned upside down from one day to the next. Am I going crazy, or is it everyone else? Cried Kitty before taking a deep breath. I'm sorry, you probably don't care what a crazy girl is saying. Try me. I'm a great listener, responded Naruto. Unfortunately, he didn't really listen to what Kitty said because Genie suddenly called to him. Naruto? Where are you? I kinda screwed up with Kitty, confessed Jean, a little bitterness in her voice. Rather than miss out on any more, Naruto stood up and looked at Kitty. Can you wait a bit? I'm parched. He saw her nod slowly and went over to the kiosk to buy a soda. I'm in the outdoors lunch area with Kitty. What exactly did you do? Jean seemed to pause for a moment before she responded with an embarrassed tone. I may have told her that I can read minds. Naruto chuckled. And you were the one telling me to be tactful. He laughed when he could hear a mental grumble coming from the redhead. Look, I've managed to talk to her a bit, so it may be better for you to go to the professor and tell him to come over. Alright, see you. He cut her off as soon as he turned his attention back to Kitty, who was now no longer alone. In his absence, Lance Alvars had apparently decided to move forward again. He stood over the seated Kitty, who was shaking her head again and again. Frustrated, Lance grabbed one of her wrists and tried to force her come with him. Hey! Shouted Naruto, making the large boy look at him. What do you think you're doing, pal? I told you to stay out of this, Blondie. She's with me now, I will make sure I'm the only friend she needs. Sneered Lance while increasing his grip on Kitty's wrist. Hey, let me go. Screamed Kitty. I told you that I don't want anything to do with whatever plan you have, you creep. I think we should listen to what she wants, said Naruto. Kitty, your parents are going to come in a few minutes, you can go ahead and meet them by the entrance. My parents? How do you know? She started to trail off before she viciously tugged on her trapped wrist. Naruto watched with wide eyes as it phased through Lance Alvars' grip. That's awesome! Exclaimed Naruto before setting his gaze on the equally shocked Alvars. Don't worry about this guy. I'll take care of him. Kitty nodded, and before Lance had the opportunity to catch her again, she phased through a wall that led inside the main building and presumably kept on running away from them. Naruto's eyes fixed on the angry mutant. Well, it's just you and me now, Kyuzater-san. I gave you one chance, but that's all I'm willing to give for someone like you. Lance's glare seemed to burn brighter with every passing second. Naruto could see the veins in his forehead wanting to pop out and his hands turning to fists. You just had to interfere, didn't you, Blondie? I warned you not to come near her, she is coming with me. You're going to pay for that. His rant over, Lance thrust his arms forward and grit his teeth as if in deep concentration. Almost immediately Naruto could feel the vibrations he'd felt earlier, but this time much stronger and aimed at him. Below him, cracks stared to form on the ground as if it were a small earthquake. It could be a dangerous ability if it had been used indoors, since it could collapse a ceiling and walls, and maybe even outdoors with proper training. This was a new mutant after all, but to Naruto it seemed quite underwhelming. He yawned mockingly. That's it? I'm getting a little bored here, Quakey. I need to get going now, he said before turning around and leaving, using his chakra to maintain steady footing amongst the heavy vibrations. Don't ignore me, blonde bastard! Demanded Lance angrily. It seemed like Spider-Man had been right about pissing off your opponents, because Naruto's senses could feel Lance charging behind him, intent on fighting him with his fists. Bad move. He waited until the moment a fist was about to connect with the back of his head to sidestep and then shoved Lance further. Combined with the previous momentum, this had the effect of sending the earthquake-generating mutant face-first towards the ground. Any harm that was done to Lance seemed superficial. The wounds would affect his ego more than his body. Naruto saw him grit his teeth and try to stand up again. You'll pay for that, he yelled, trying to save some dignity through pure aggressiveness. Shut up. You're boring, and you're also weak. You would have found a place to train back with us if you weren't such an ass, but that's a burnt bridge, I guess, responded Naruto before he started to walk away again towards the main building. Now, if you excuse me, Quakey, I'm gonna go with the mutant in this town who isn't an idiot, and is prettier as well. Lance continued to lay down. You bastard! He muttered. I'll get you next time. Naruto ignored the threats coolly, but inside he was anything but. That was so cool, he thought, remembering all the times Sasuke had done something similar. Too bad Jean wasn't here to see it. I should have told Kitty to stay and watch me be awesome. Turns out he didn't have to go far to see the petite brunette capable of phasing through objects. Gone was the gym uniform, and she now donned a cream-colored undershirt with a pink-sleeved sweater, light blue capri pants, and brown sandals on her feet. Naruto also noticed a necklace that had a six-pointed star she hadn't worn before, probably too valuable. Hello again. Naruto shuffled uncomfortably. Sorry for not telling you. This must all be very hard for you. Kitty nodded slowly. What happened to that jerk? Naruto puffed his chest. I took care of him. Told him not to bother you anymore, but knowing his kind I doubt he will stay to it. That's why they are jerks, replied Kitty with a nervous smile before her posture sagged. There's no, going back, right? There's no getting rid of this. Shaking his head, Naruto took a deep breath and tried to find the best words. We can't change the things that happen to us, but we can choose how it affects us, how we react to it. Right now, the way you can choose to look at it is that you have a gift. He smiled brightly. I mean, you can walk through walls. That's awesome. Her face broke a bit into a smile. I guess. I just want to be, like, normal. We can try to be like others if that's what you want. That's what the Institute is for. There's me and Jean, who you've already met. Ororo is awesome, too. Scott is a bit stuck up at times and Kurt can be annoying, but they're cool. There's the Xavier-sensei and Logan as well. I guess. I can give it a try, she responded, looking at feet. Naruto grinned and gave her thumbs up. You won't regret it. Ugh. Thumbs up, like, so lame. She giggled. Naruto thought it definitely sounded cute. Let's go then. The professor should be able to take care of everything. We go to school as well back in New York. Honestly, it's very similar to here, Naruto rambled on while following her towards the entrance. You'll love it, Catherine. Call me Kitty. Catherine makes me sound, like, so old. Naruto nodded. Kitty. Pretty Kitty, gotcha. He barely noticed how her face started to flush pink, his attention was more focused forwards, where the professor and Jean were waiting alongside Kitty's parents. So focused that he felt the violent vibrations too late. I told you to not get in my way. Growled a voice behind him. Naruto turned around to see Lance Alvars on the other side of the hallway. Dried mud covered the front part of his body from the shoes to the face, but that did not seem to deter him. Kitty! Cried Mrs. Pride as the violent vibrations became something akin to a true earthquake. Indoors, the ability was a lot more dangerous, even for someone as untrained as Lance. Cracks started to appear all along the floor, spreading towards the walls and the ceiling. Small pieces of granite eventually started to fall off as the vibrations became more and more turbulent. Naruto barely had time to activate his eyes before the building started to fall over him. He immediately closed the distance between him and Kitty and concentrated as much as he could on the huge pieces of rubble. The falling ceiling may not be enough to seriously damage someone with his body structure, but Kitty was another story. He had to protect her now. Stay close. He yelled while holding one of his hands towards the debris and the other at his temple. It was hard, harder than anything else he'd done. The weight of the rubble was almost overwhelming, his head pounded for him to stop. Fortunately, Jean seemed to have joined in at the last moment, lessening his burden. However, while the fragments above them were stopped, the ones beside fell and surrounded them with concrete. Don't worry, Naruto gasped. I'll get us out. Hold my hand, said Kitty as her smaller hand encircled his. I think I know what to do. Hold on. Naruto grit his teeth before letting go of his concentration. Immediately, the rubble fell down on top of them. As a defensive maneuver, he encircled Kitty's smaller frame with his own, shielding her with his back as he expected the impact, but it never came. It was strange. He knew there should be an impact, a shove, anything, but there wasn't. Only Kitty's hand, tugging at him, warm and shivering but filled with determination. He followed her eagerly. It must have been the first time he held hands with a girl in such a way. It felt nice. Real nice. Suddenly, the light came back and both he and Kitty fell down on the floor. "W-O!" exclaimed Kitty. Guess this has its uses after all. Naruto chuckled, trying his best to recover from the headache. I told you, awesome. Kitty! Came a couple of voices. Naruto raised his head to see Kitty's parents running towards them, eventually engulfing her in a hug. I'm alright, Mom, she said, closing her eyes. Thanks to them. I think I know what I'm supposed to do now with this gift. Yes. It is a gift, declared the professor as he approached the reunited family. One that we can help you control and use for good. You have now seen what happens when it's used for selfish and destructive reasons. Speaking of, yelled Naruto, his eyes still shining on red. I'm gonna teach Quakey another lesson. No, commanded the professor. We do not initiate conflict. We use our abilities to protect ourselves and our loved ones. Young Alvars needs to come to us first, but he is a danger. Who knows what he'll do now? I have decided to convince Mr. Alvars to calm down and leave. He has decided not to come with us and we must respect that. Hopefully young Ms. Pride will be more welcoming to our offer. Naruto grumbled but nodded. Knowing Alvars, he'd find a way to get back at him somehow. Right now, he was more interested in Kitty's decision. That, and the fact that Jean was doting on him, searching for injuries. Mom! Daddy, said Kitty. I think I will go with them. They're right, I need to train and know more about myself. Besides, she looked at Naruto and her face turned pink a little. I don't think it'll do me bad to go to another school. Mr. Pride sighed. I know, sweetie. He gave her a hug while looking back at Professor Xavier. Charles, I think we have some things to talk about. Yes, we do, old friend, responded the professor, but Naruto paid no more attention to that. He was tired. Mind powers took a hell of a lot more toll than good old physical feats he could perform without seemingly running out of energy. He wordlessly excused himself before going out of the damaged building to lay down on the grass for a bit, about to go to sleep until he heard the crunching of leaves beside his head. Hey! It was Kitty, who slowly sat down beside him. You all right? She asked, genuine concern in her tone. I'm fine. You're lucky you got a physical power. Mental powers can be such a drain, groaned Naruto. The headache was getting lower now, thankfully. Yeah, but it was like, so cool though, she said before giggling. Thanks for saving my life, by the way. No problem, pretty kitty, responded Naruto. He didn't know where that had come up to begin with, but it fit. Besides, you did most of the work. Anyways, so like, my parents are gonna be talking to the professor for a while, and well. I just remember how like, stressed I've been the last couple of days. I haven't eaten like, at all, so, like. I could really go for one of Mr. Janako's chicken gyros right about now. Kitty rambled on before her voice quieted down a bit. And I wanted to ask if you'd like to come with me, finish what you were telling me before? Food and a pretty girl? Why didn't I have this much luck back in Konoha, thought Naruto before grinning like his headache was completely gone. Sure. He exclaimed. Though, I don't know what a gyro is. Only thing you need to know is that they're delicious and you'll probably eat around 6 of them, came the voice of Jean, who was approaching them. Mind if I join you? I also skipped breakfast. Sure. Said Kitty before standing up. I'm sorry for getting off on the wrong foot. Jean nodded. I understand, it's hard to get used to it at first. Just know that I'll try my best not to invade other people's mental privacy. Same with Professor Xavier and Naruto. Kitty turned back to Naruto. You can read minds too? Naruto nodded. Jean and I have very similar powers. It's weird, really. But the advantage is that I have someone to help me a lot. You really all help each other, huh? We're all in this together. Everyone at the institute is ready to lend a hand, even when they're being a bit hard, responded Jean. Anyways, said Kitty while grabbing Naruto's hand, an act that actually made him feel warm and tingly inside like the last time. You can tell me all about it in a bit, anymore, and I'll starve to death. Naruto couldn't wipe the goofy grin off his face as he followed Kitty. Whether she knew or not that she still kept on holding his hand, he did not know, but being the center of attention of a beautiful girl was something new to him. New, yet not unwelcome. From the corner of his eye, he managed to look at Jean. She looked frustrated, but Naruto could not figure out why. It mattered little, he could figure it out later. Right now, he wanted to get some food in his belly. He may not know what a gyro is, but he already knew he was going to enjoy the experience either way. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction. Looking forward to having you on board again.